Hey, so we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto was seen by his mother with Lady Phenex during Romantic Moments movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Revan, I want a baby of my own, just like Victoria. Layla, the stunning wife of the head of Phenex house, demanded of her neglectful husband. Layla was a youthful woman with a curvaceous body and incredibly long blonde hair. Her face was adorned with delicate features, complemented by golden eyes and striking eyebrows. Her hair was wrapped in a loose ponytail, cascading all the way down to her hips. She was currently wearing a nightgown adorned with various images of the majestic phoenix. I think we have already talked about it a long time ago, Layla. So why are you bringing up this conversation again? With a scowl on his face, the head of the phoenix begrudgingly conceded his wife's order. Layla clenched her hands tightly. But I also want to be a mother, Revan. Victoria already has Ruvel, Riser, and another child, but I have none, she said softly, her demeanor conveying a deep sense of seriousness regarding the sensitive matter. If there was one thing she longed for in her mundane life, it was to have a child of her own, someone to call family. Revan twitched slightly, a mix of seriousness and annoyance on her face. I understand, Layla. I know, but I can't change it. Even you can't do anything except come to terms with the harsh reality of your existence. You can't have children, Layla, and the sooner you embrace this truth, the less you'll suffer, he growled. Gasping in surprise, the Phenex matriarch stumbled back. The cold and harsh truth from her husband's words were enough to persuade her, as who could possibly enjoy hearing that they couldn't have children due to their family's long history of infertility. Then how can I become a mother, Revan? She whimpered, with a sorrowful frown on her adorable face. Revan fell into silence, for he himself was unaware of the answer to Layla's question. All he knew was that the chances of her becoming pregnant were extremely slim, so slim in fact that they could be considered virtually impossible. His wife was one of the few devils who could not have children, and that alone was enough to drive him mad. Despite having many beautiful women to choose from, he decided to make her his second wife and was now facing the consequences of his foolish choice. Although he already had many children, having a few more wouldn't hurt anyone, would it? I'm not sure, Layla, he whispered. But. Sleep. Revan yelled. Before he could understand the consequences of his actions, a cascade of scorching flames flooded the entire room, consuming everything they touched. Layla. How dare you yell at me, Revan? The rising heat only heightened the fear in Revan's heart. Layla's sweet and fragile appearance when discussing motherhood might deceive others, but not Revan. His wife was in fact one of the most powerful Phenex ever born. Revan couldn't help but feel both respect and fear for her immense power. The powerful flames and searing heat served as a great reminder of why he had chosen to marry her in the first place. He wanted her formidable flames to be passed on to their future children. I'm sorry. Layla's sharp blue eyes plunged into the yellow storm of fire. Shut up. She growled, the pain and sorrow palpable in her voice. Revan hung his head, overwhelmed by a mixture of shame and anger. Why yes, he muttered under his breath. Soon, the flames gradually dwindled, leaving him to witness the devastating aftermath. This was his moment to rectify his wrongs. Layla. I don't want to talk to you anymore, Revan, the lady whispered as she stood up. Where are you going? I don't know. Konoha. The village hidden in the leaf was now nothing more than some stacks of destroyed rocks, deserted streets, and burned-out woods. Gloomy clouds of ash loomed over the decimated village, casting a haunting shadow over the unidentifiable, lifeless bodies of citizens scattered on the roads. The reason behind the enormous destruction of the village was none other than the catastrophe in the form of a nine-tailed fox named Kikbi. A fox, which had unexpectedly escaped from the body of its former container, Kashina, was filled with rage due to the years of confinement it had suffered at the hands of humans. As a result, it brought chaos to the once peaceful village and its inhabitants. The beast didn't spare anything or anyone from its retribution. With a single swing of its tail, the fox laid waste to entire mountains, unleashing the devastating power of the Bijgdama to obliterate countless buildings and houses. The explanation for the fox breakout was unknown to most of the public, but to the immense relief of the villagers, their hero, the Yondaime, managed to achieve victory against the enormous fox and sealed it away inside the belly of the death god, Shinigami. While the majority of people were busy repairing their homes or searching for their loved ones, there was a notable individual who could be seen sitting atop the head of the Yondaime Hokage. The individual had gorgeous gray hair, a pair of warm brown eyes, and a slender body that radiated an abundance of wisdom. The person's face was adorned with wrinkles and marks that simply hinted at the depth of their life experience. The asserted individual was none other than the third Hokage of the village of Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi. The man was currently eyeing his precious village that was simmering within the flames of hatred and sorrow. The wonderful village that is Sensei Hashirama Senju conceived years ago was meant to offer a home and safety to numerous wandering clans and thousands of innocent civilians. I'm truly sorry, Sensei. I failed to protect your village. After a long, suffocating silence, Hiruzen finally expressed his anguish, his face devoid of any emotion except for the heavy burden of grief. I was powerless, Sensei. That creature was too much for even me to handle, he added, his words accompanied by a subtle scowl. He cast his tired eyes toward the forest that enveloped his village, unable to stop the wave of disappointment that washed over him as he remembered the recent events. He lost his wife, Bawako, his heir, Minato, his daughter in all but blood, Kushina, and an innocent newborn who probably didn't even notice what was going on around him. All because of that masked man. He roared, expressing his frustration to the world. That man stole everything from him and Minato in a single night. He murdered everyone, from Bawako to the young Kushina. That monster didn't even spare poor and innocent Naruto from his vengeance. If only I had been a little more aware, Minato, he whispered. The masked man's actions could have been prevented had he been more vigilant of his surroundings. Unfortunately, he let down his guard following the successful sealing of the beast, leading to the tragic demise of Naruto. The masked man caught sight of the opening between him and his associates and skillfully harnessed an incredibly potent time manipulation jutsu with the aid of the strange chakra emanating from that plant man. I failed you, Minato. I couldn't protect your legacy. I'm sorry, Hiruzen whispered with a faraway look on his face. I hope you find true happiness this time in afterlife, Naruto. Uo. The interdimensional void was an incredibly extraordinary place, resembling an infinite ocean of vibrant colors and breathtaking patterns. As far as the eye could see, there was a breathtaking array of colors and illustrations, with the exception of a small room tucked away in the most remote corner of the rift. The room in question was unremarkable at first glance, merely a small space constructed from neatly organized concrete blocks, infused with an unusual white energy. It was further adorned with stunning ripple patterns bathed in purple hues, inscribed on both sides of the walls. At that moment, the room was occupied by 3 people dressed in elegant white robes. The first individual was a tall, pale-skinned man with a face adorned by thick wrinkles and a sharp jawline. He had spiky, shoulder-length light brown hair and a laced lock of hair in front of his left ear that added to his distinctive appearance. His face also featured a fairly lengthy goatee, along with horn-like protrusions adorning each side of his forehead and a striking red ripple-like marking in the center. The second person was also a tall man with short, spiky brown hair and an elegant face embellished with locks of hair wrapped in bandages that framed each side of his face. Like the previous person, this man had a striking jawline and a pair of brown eyes with a hint of yellow in them. The third individual was a handsome man with long strands of brown hair that were cut short on top and styled in a sleek cylindrical manner at the back. He possessed dark onyx eyes that were surrounded by bright blue markings and an identical sharp jawline. It is truly unfortunate that the story of your descendant, Naruto, has to end in this way, Ashura, the elderly man spoke with a voice filled with great sorrow and grief. Hanging on to every word spoken by the old sage, Ashura, the man, released a sigh and nodded his head with a tinge of sadness. I can't believe Zetsu resorted to such extreme measures to ensure no one interferes with his plan. Naruto was just a child, he could have shown some mercy, he growled, his eyes locked onto the dimension rift without any hint of emotion. Now he's Zetsu, he doesn't care about anything, except for his mother. He will stop at nothing, regardless of the gravity of the consequences, to ensure the success of his plan. The third man with onyx eyes snapped at the duo, clearly irked by the mention of that conniving individual who had taken advantage of him for personal gain. Ashura glanced at his brother. I know Indranai. It's just I'm angry because of his actions resulting in the death of an innocent child, and now I won't be able to transmigrate for a while due to his selfishness. With Naruto gone, I won't have a suitable vessel for my chakra to transmigrate into. He spoke with a cynical expression on his face. Now, how was he supposed to resolve the conflict with his brother? That Zetsu ruined everything. Indra fell silent for a minute before a small chuckle escaped his lips, a gesture that instantly put the other 2 occupants of the room on high alert. Have you forgotten who we are sitting besides, Ashura? The mythical Rikidm Sennin. A man who possesses extraordinary abilities, capable of achieving the impossible and rejuvenating Naruto's body, should not be a challenging task for him. Isn't that right, Hagoromo Otsutsuki? He snarled, not even making an effort to conceal the amount of hatred he held for his stupid father. Hagoromo was deeply affected by the harsh and disrespectful remarks of his elder son. The impact they had on him was just as powerful as before. In the past, he had tried countless times to change the beliefs of his elder son, Indra, alongside Ashura. However, Indra never paid them any attention, and as a result, he still remained very distant from redemption. It is true that I possess the ability to revive Naruto, but even my powers have their limitations, Indra. Once revived, I will be unable to transport his body back to his world. His remains are trapped between two prominent realms, and reviving him would bring no benefit. It is best to let him reunite with his parents in the spiritual realm of the afterlife. The wise sage delivered his explanation with a calm demeanor, his aged face displaying knowing wisdom. A subtle spasm of flickering Sharingan was Indra's response to his father's arguments. Lies. The red inside his eyes gleamed with fury. You simply don't wish to see me and Ashura battle each other for a while now, he growled. Ashura, who was listening attentively to his father's explanation, shot a subtle glare at his brother in response to his icy words. Nai-san, don't talk to father like that. It's for the best that we quit this dispute of ours, once and for all. You have to understand it, Nai-san, only love can bring peace to the world. Enough, Ashura. Until I prove that I was right, I will not stop fighting. Indra roared furiously as the Sharingan within his eyes transformed into the treacherous Manjikyu. You can never understand, Ashura, for how long I have been waiting for that special moment when I ultimately win against you and expose both of you as false. His voice boomed with rage, leaving the other two men stunned, as they had never seen him that angry before. No, I will never allow it, Indra Nai, came an immediate shocked answer from Ashura. The cold, red eyes of Indra fixated on the brown-haired man for a moment before returning to their true object of disdain. Hagoromo Otsutsuki. I'm honestly growing tired of your beloved son, father. He doesn't understand what it feels like to have the entire world in your hands. I, on the other hand, am well aware of everything. That's why his words suddenly perished as the wounded and torn body of Naruto unexpectedly materialized in the void. Realizing that the body had completed its interdimensional journey to the afterlife, Indra closed his eyes with gratitude and respect. Despite the boy's insignificance, he had died at the hands of his foolish descendants, a fact that filled Indra with sadness. I hope he finds his family. His fiery red eyes snapped open abruptly as a cunning idea coursed through his wicked mind, an idea that had the potential to change everything for him and satisfy his insatiable thirst for power and admiration. Living a life filled with hatred and scorn had somehow become an expected part of his existence as a transmigrant, and he wanted to change that. With a wicked smirk on his face, Indra glanced at his father and blinked. Oh, dear father of mine, I have a fascinating proposal for you, he whispered, his words carrying the ominous weight of a serpent poised to strike its prey. Witnessing the sudden change in his son's expression and voice, Hagoromo became cautious, but he was determined to hear Indra out regardless. What kind of proposal? He asked, looking quite skeptical of the sudden request. Checkmate. The progenitor of the Uchiha clan thought gleefully, I can see that you are eager to bring an end to this eternal dispute. So, for the sake of you and my dear brother Ashura, I will finally put an end to this endless conflict. He murmured with a calm demeanor, concealing his happiness as he reveled in the surprised expressions of his brother and father. What do you want in return? The elder sage inquired shortly, well aware of his elder son's cunning nature. Indra would never undertake something of such magnitude unless it greatly benefited him. That was just the way his son was. I want you to revive Naruto. The deafening silence fell over the whole area. Why? Ashura snapped out of his shock and turned to his brother with a cautious expression, demanding an explanation. Indra's lips released a moan filled with irritation. If they continued to progress at that rate, he was sure that it wouldn't be long before he let loose his temper again. I am exhausted by this repetitive cycle, Ashura. I want to try something new, something that doesn't involve the shinobi world. I will leave that world to you and your power of love, he said as he turned his eyes to look at the child's body. By something different, are you attempting to? Hagoromo paused, a bitter realization slowly sinking in. No, I cannot permit you to do this, Indra. He exclaimed, startling his younger son with his firm words. Clasping his hands tightly, Indra forced a fake smile onto his face, a crucial element of his plan. In order to successfully manipulate his father, he needed to control his anger and smile more often. Otherwise, their conversation would end up being completely pointless. Father, you are being unfair. In the past, you worked hard to stop the feud between us brothers, claiming it was destructive. But now, when I'm offering a chance to finally resolve the issue, you are denying my proposal, Indra mumbled, shaking his head in dissatisfaction. Hagoromo felt as though he had withered away upon hearing his elder son's words. Despite their harshness, he couldn't deny their truth. I understand, Indra, but what you aim to do is not noble either. It can ruin the balance between the two realms. He made an earnest effort to argue with his son, hoping that he would come to realize the impracticality of the idea. Unfortunately, all Hagoromo received in response from Indra was a hollow chuckle. I should have expected it because there's no way you would ever agree with me, father. I bet if Ashura was in my place, then you would have supported the idea without hesitation. With the intensity of an inferno, Indra's comments engulfed the entire room in an overwhelming surge of hatred. "You're absolutely," the old sage tried to argue, but was once again silenced by his exasperated elder son. "I'm not mistaken. You've always favored Ashura over me," Indra snarled as the Manjiku began to spin in his eyes. Realizing that his father was being pressured by his brother, Ashura made the bold decision to step into the conversation. "Father, if Indranai genuinely wants to bring this child back to life, then please it. I don't see any harm in that," he suggested, knowing that no matter how absurd the proposal might seem to his father, finding an end to the feud was of utmost importance at that moment. Hagoromo fell silent for a moment, a ragged sigh escaping his lips. "Very well," he whispered, unaware that by accepting Ashura's suggestion, he had inadvertently proven Indra correct. "However, the child's body will require chakra to survive. With Kurama-kun no longer sealed inside him, I need an enormous source of potent chakra to revive him," he explained, a small frown appearing on his lips at the mention of his beloved Kurama. Upon realizing that his descendant was the one to be revived, Ashura was on the verge of nominating himself, but he couldn't when Indra spoke before him. "I will bestow upon him my mighty chakra and eyes, father. I have little left to accomplish in this realm, so I am more than willing to gift this child with my exceptional chakra," Indra declared with a joyful grin on his face, advancing confidently towards the infant, eager to impart his formidable chakra upon him. At that moment, Ashura comprehended his brother's intentions. He pointed an accusing finger and shouted, "You want to move to that new world with the help of this child, Nai-san. Don't you?" Ignoring the disturbance caused by his little brother, Indra continued to stride towards the lifeless body of the child. Upon reaching the destination, Indra gently tapped the boy's forehead with his index finger, and immediately a malevolent wave of purple energy engulfed the child. "I have great expectations for you, young Naruto," he said to the boy who was still surrounded by his energy. "I cannot explain it, but when I first laid eyes on you, a strange sensation stirred within my heart. It told me that you will be the one to demonstrate the true power of Indra Otsutsuki to the world. I sincerely hope that my instincts do not fail me this time, Naruto." His lips lowered in shame as he remembered the disappointing legacy of his descendants in the shinobi world. Shaking off the sad thoughts, he was about to stand up but hesitated when an incredibly important thought struck his mind. "How could I forget that?" Indra exclaimed to himself. Without wasting any more time, the man delicately grasped Naruto's right palm. Suddenly, a symbol resembling a crescent moon materialized on the boy's skin. "Do amazing things, Naruto, and always love your mother, as mothers never discriminate among their children." With those words, Indra confidently stepped away from the child and signaled his father to unleash the power of the ultimate Rinnegan technique. Hagoromo instantly understood the significance behind his son's gesture. He clasped his hands together firmly, forming a prayer-like position, and began to speak a few words. "Jedmarin Tensei. Art of Rin Rebirth." For a brief moment, nothing out of the ordinary occurred, but soon a strange blue outline materialized in the hands of the sage. Beckoning the blue light towards Naruto's body, Hagoromo smiled. "You truly are an extraordinary individual, Naruto," he whispered to the boy. "My son Indra has never gone to such lengths for anyone, not even for himself. I hope that wherever you're going, you achieve great things and make him proud." As soon as he finished speaking, the child was enveloped in a brilliant blue light and began trembling as he soared into the air. While everything was happening, Ashura stood on the sidelines, unable to hide his frustration as he watched the blue light infiltrate the body of his descendant. Regardless of what his brother and father said, he couldn't let his descendant sink into such hatred. Naruto was and would always be his descendant, and it was his duty to ensure his safety. "Yes. I need to keep him safe from the harmful effects of Indranai's chakra," he thought and closed his eyes as he placed his index finger on the ground, a gesture that caught his father's attention, causing a warm smile to form on his face. "It's very unfortunate that we couldn't stay together for long, Naruto, but remember, I still believe that you'll grow up to be a very good person and will help those in need. After all, you're one of my descendants and they always make me proud." He smiled warmly, his eyes filled with pride and love. If his brother's chakra ever attempted to influence his mind, his potent and powerful chakra would always be there to protect him from it. "Also, I hope you find true happiness and fulfillment with a loving family this time. Kuo." As Layla strolled through the vibrant and bustling park of the picturesque little town, she couldn't help but wonder how those terrible devils had managed to seize such a stunning place from the majestic Imkai. No matter how hard she tried to imagine, her mind still refused to come up with a plausible explanation for the whole situation. It was as if the devils had slyly stolen it from the Imkai, while those oblivious fools never even realized what had happened in the first place. Whatever the reasons or conditions were for such an exchange, Layla was glad that her faction had managed to acquire this beautiful town. Trapped in the dreadful world of the underworld, she had forgotten the exquisite beauty that the human world could possess when it so desired. Decorated with lush green trees and beautiful buildings, the town looked like something out of a fairy tale, or at least that's how it appeared to her. The artificial towns of the underworld, although just as stunning as their counterparts in the human world, had one major deficiency, according to her. The absence of humans. It was the humans and their emotions that made these towns so enchanting, something that those towns in hell could never hope to achieve. Mama, look at that lady, she's so beautiful. A radiant smile and warm eyes lit up when a small girl who was playing with her mother smiled at her, while pointing out her beauty to her apparent jealous mother. The woman was looking at her as if she were an abomination, and Layla couldn't blame her for it. Humans were inherently envious creatures, often filled with resentment towards anything they could not possess or conquer. Supernatural entities' charm and beauty were one of those things, and it was evident that humans would hate them for that. After all, beauty and charm carried a lot of power and influence in their mortal world. Yeah, Suki-chan. Now let's go to that other ride in the park. Layla couldn't help but smile as the mother practically began to drag her daughter away from her. Although amusing for a moment, the entire incident quickly made her realize one crucial thing. She had a family of her own. She whispered, feeling the shards of bitter reality piercing her shattered heart. Beauty and charm were temporary, but a family and the happiness that it brought with itself were eternal. Her beauty, on which she was fawning over a while ago, would eventually cease to exist and could never win against the love and support that women receive from her daughter daily. Now, I feel envious. A radiant smile adorned her beautiful face as she found herself at the opposite end of the spectrum this time. It was amusing how she had laughed at that lady just a while ago, and now that very same lady had managed to ruin her entire day without uttering a word. Vile humans and their families, she muttered under her breath as she began to walk towards the dense part of the park, hoping to find something interesting or at least a place to sit and mourn in solitude. It wasn't long before she finally arrived at her desired destination. A secluded clearing, enclosed by a dense canopy of towering trees and a pond brimming with pristine, sky-blue water. Overall, the place was exceptionally beautiful, and Layla was sure she could happily waste away some precious hours of her life there. Finally, I can relax. She sighed, sinking onto a bench placed by the pond for visitors to enjoy the view. Life has been exhausting lately, especially with Riser being so needlessly irritating, she murmured, recalling the prank the child had played on his father's birthday. For Layla, it was both amusing and horrifying at the same time. The prank was amusing because its target was none other than the foolish man, Rivan. However, it was also horrifying because it made her realize that if by some chance she were to have a child, it could very well turn out to be just like Riser. Obnoxious and wild. No. My child will not be like Riser. She refused to even entertain that thought. A son like Riser was a nightmare, and she had witnessed it firsthand because she was the one who had raised him alongside Victoria, not Rivan. She knew very well how poorly Riser behaved when it came to learning manners. My child will be more like me. Compassed and smart. Yes, that's how my child will. She paused when she realized just how stupid she was sounding at that moment. Someone who had no chance of conceiving a child of her own should not be acting like her. She struggled to find the words as the harsh reality stared her in the face. I just want to have a child, that's all, she murmured, her voice fading to a barely audible whisper as she began to lose herself in the superficial realm of her dream. She continued to dwell on her miseries for a while until a shrill cry suddenly pierced her ears, jolting her with its intense pain and discomfort, bringing her back to reality. Blue eyes darted around, searching for the obscure source of the sound, but to no avail. Wah. Her ears again perked up when the sound returned, this time with an intensified volume. What is that? Layla wondered, straining her ears to locate the source of the anguished wail. The sound bore an eerie resemblance to a child's cry, but surely that couldn't be true, could it? Who would abandon their child in such a desolate and shadowy corner of the park? Struggling with disbelief, Layla couldn't help but question the possibility while thinking over the mystery surrounding the distressing sound. Wah. Her heart skipped a beat as she heard it clearly this time. The sound was unmistakable, like the skies above her. It was the cry of a child. Oh dear Satan, she gasped, standing up from the bench in an instant. Wah. Keen blue eyes began scrutinizing everything minutely, leaving no area untouched by their gaze. Wah wah. She froze as the child's voice began to fade, only to be abruptly silenced by the deafening chorus of chirping insects. The relentless noise of the insects was now making it impossible for her to hear anything. What happened? She asked herself, fearing what might have occurred in the darkness of the clearing. Was the child okay? Her heart pleaded with her mind, causing her to feel numb. Chirp. Her hands twitched. Chirp. Flames began to materialize around her. Hi. The deafening silence took hold as torrents of flames consumed the very spot where those loud insects had been chirping and inhabiting mere moments before. Now everything was silent again. Wah. Soft and almost inaudible, her heart leaped with satisfaction and surprise as the voice reached her ears once more. "There!" she exclaimed, glancing in the direction from which the sound was coming. In an instant, she found herself standing before the untamed undergrowth that was hiding the child from her view. "I can only hope that the child is safe and in good health," she softly muttered. Her expectations were brutally shattered when she saw the blood-soaked piece of cloth that was protecting the child from the sharp thorns nearby. "Shit!" she screamed as she leaped into the bushes without giving a second thought to her own safety. At that moment, nothing was more important to her than saving that child's life. "No, no, no," she whispered as the blanket covering the child was lifted, revealing wounds she never imagined a newborn could have. They were so terrible that she had to look away, unable to bear the sight of such suffering. "Please hold on for a moment, my dear," she whispered as she started to cast the only healing spell she knew. He's dying. A sad and heavy realization took hold of her heart, tugging and twisting it in inexplicable ways. "Don't you dare die," she pleaded, her gaze fixated on the child's bloodied face. Her heart sank as she noticed the painful marks and cuts that marred his delicate skin. "I can't bear to see a child die like this," Layla said, lowering her head in shame. She continued to do her best to save the child's life. "WAAH. The red stain on her hand froze her in place. "He's coughing blood," she whispered, then immediately bolstered the power behind her spell. Screw the restrictions, right now, she needed to save this innocent child and reunite him with his parents. "Wabweho." Layla's heart sank as the child turned to her, letting out one final gurgle before closing its eyes forever. The once beautiful and innocent child was now nothing more than a lifeless body, drenched in a sinister pool of scarlet. "I am so," she struggled to form an apology, but the words refused to come out. It was as if they were rebelling against her at that moment. "He died because of me." The truth finally came out of her mouth, and believe her when she said it stung badly, it really did. "If only I had found him a little earlier, I could have saved him with my healing spells." She yelled at no one in particular. "It's all because of me." Insult after insult, Layla didn't stop berating herself for her foolish mistake. "I'm pure evil." She paused, her eyes widening in surprise as a strange idea struck her like a huge boulder. It seemed preposterous, but at that moment, she didn't care. "But I don't even know his name, and what about his family?" Her head lowered again in shame. "I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person," she muttered to herself, tears on the verge of falling from her eyes. "I'll never be able to forgive myself now." Her cries suddenly ceased when she noticed something written on the cloth covering the pale body of the child. Japanese. She gently raised the child to eye level and began to read the syllables inscribed on the soft blanket. "NARUTO." She finished with a sad smile on her face. "So your name was Naruto, eh?" Her guilt-filled eyes stared at the lifeless body of Naruto. "Wah." Her heart nearly stopped when the child suddenly moved his hand and gently grabbed one of her fingers within his grasp. It was truly incredible, and she was unable to fully express the depth of emotion she felt at that moment. "No, I can't let him die like this." She was determined to save the boy. If he had a family, he wouldn't be in such a dire condition. Perhaps he was an orphan or someone who was neglected by his parents for some unknown reason. Yet, none of that mattered to her. "Naruto," her soft fingers caressed his cheeks as a box decorated with numerous diamonds materialized beside her. "I will save you, my child," she whispered and gently opened the box, revealing shiny new chess pieces. "Now." A shimmering, ethereal shield abruptly enveloped the duo, concealing them from the prying eyes of humans. "What should I use for you?" "A rook piece?" she asked him, blinking as he looked at her in response, his vibrant blue eyes on the verge of closing again. Blue, her eyes twinkled with happiness. He had her eyes, she thought, and she almost squealed when she saw his blonde hair. He was just like her. Her son. In that instant, she finally made her decision. With a swift motion, she lifted the queen piece from the box, deftly arranging the magical circles needed to bring forth a reincarnation of a person into a devil. It was her first time doing this, and she was determined to make it worthwhile for both herself and her child. Her child. Her heart fluttered again as a strange sensation swarmed it from all sides. "There," she smiled as she delicately placed the queen piece on the boy's chest, watching it vanish into his small body. She was ready to recite the spell for the procedure, but was abruptly silenced as the ground beneath her began to violently tremble. "What's happening? Is this an earthquake?" she exclaimed with concern, trying to keep her balance on the trembling floor. Snap. Hearing the strange sound, Layla immediately turned her attention back to Naruto, only to gasp when she finally saw the extraordinary spectacle before her. The massive, almost overwhelming amount of distinct purple and golden energies were flickering around Naruto's body. It seemed as though the energies were trying to harm both her and her child, yet mysteriously, they managed to avoid causing any harm to either of them. "What is happening?" she exclaimed, unable to conceal her amazement any longer. Her mind was transfixed by the immense energy irradiating from her child. Roar. Her blue eyes widened to unnatural proportions as the energy transformed into a menacing creature that could make even Satan tremble in fear. It was huge, and the most surprising part was that it was only its torso. Her throat went dry as the monstrous half-torso creature raised its hand and lightly tapped her forehead. Instantly, a surge of energy coursed through her body. However, before she could even utter a single question, the creature vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Naruto. She swiftly picked up her child and smiled at the sound of his adorable little snoring. I finally have a family of my own. She exclaimed with a tearful face, releasing the grief she had held in her heart for years. Hey, can I play with you all? The blonde-haired child exclaimed, his huge cerulean eyes sparkling with joy and uncontained excitement as he watched a group of children engrossed in a thrilling game at the playground. From the expressions on their faces, it was clear that they all looked happy, and that's why he wanted to join them. He wanted to be happy too. The group of startled children abruptly halted their play and turned their curious eyes toward the blonde child, not a single word escaping their lips. They stayed in that position for a few more seconds until the uncomfortable silence was finally broken by a girl with pitch black hair and beautiful violet eyes, gazing intensely at the boy as she walked towards him. "Who are you?" she asked with a voice filled with innocence and curiosity. The boy's smile vanished as his eyes met the scrutinizing looks of the other children. Was it because he was new here? He wasn't sure, but he turned his attention back to the girl, feeling a sense of uncertainty. He paused, taking a moment to collect himself. "I'm Naruto," he said, introducing himself timidly and cautiously, careful not to overstate anything. His name stirred varied reactions from everyone around him. Some recoiled in suspicion, others blinked in curiosity, while the rest simply smiled, including the girl standing in front of him. "I'm Sona Citri. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto," she said, gracefully adjusting her lilac frames back onto her slender nose. She could already tell that the boy was shy and afraid by his behavior, but she chose not to pass any judgment. After all, it was normal for children his age to display such emotions, and she didn't want to draw attention to it unnecessarily. "Really?" Naruto was unable to hide the surprise in his voice, still not believing the words that came out of the girl's mouth. Usually, the children either ignored him or outright rejected his advances whenever he tried to initiate a conversation with them. Although he had not yet figured out the reason behind it, his beautiful mother, technically his aunt, had once mentioned that it had something to do with his cousin Riser, whom he had never met. The Citri girl couldn't help but frown at the boy's overly hopeful and bewildered expression, which made her feel confused. What was there to be so happy about? After all, they welcomed everyone, her mind mused. Nonetheless, she nodded her head in acknowledgement. "Yeah," she mumbled, her hesitation evident in her tone. Naruto responded with a beaming smile, almost blinding the girl with his radiant expression. "It's a pleasure to meet you too, Sona Citri," he exclaimed, enveloping the poor girl in a bone-crushing hug. A rush of embarrassment flooded her face, turning it a vivid shade of red as she realized she couldn't escape from Naruto's firm grasp. Though his hug was warm and comforting, it still left her feeling utterly embarrassed, only slightly less so than her sister's infamous hugs. "I can't breathe," she finally wheezed out between her futile efforts. Confused at first, Naruto didn't understand why Sona had screamed until a humiliating realization dawned upon him after a good amount of time. "I'm still hugging her." Releasing her quickly, he smiled sheepishly at her, all while scratching his chin in shame. "Sorry about that, Sona. I just got a little excited, you know," he told her before she could say anything. As he released his grip on her waist, Sona stumbled backwards, gasping for air. The lack of oxygen had caused her collapse. Regaining her composure, she took a deep breath to restore her calmness and stared at Naruto with an intense glare, as cold as ice, completely leaving him speechless. "Excited for what?" she sneered, momentarily losing control of her emotions. After her outburst, the children behind her began to laugh at Naruto's misfortune. Naruto recoiled at the pointed insult about his intelligence and quickly averted his gaze from her face. I don't have any friends to play with, Sona. So when you said that you'll play with me, I got excited and lost control of my actions. I'm sorry," he murmured, expressing his deep sorrow and remorse with every word. He acknowledged that what he did was wrong and had no problem admitting to it. All the coldness vanished from her face and her eyes softened as soon as Sona heard his answer. It was truly unfortunate. "Why don't you have any friends?" she couldn't help but ask him. Naruto perked up as soon as he heard her question. He mustered a small smile, doing his best to hide the emotional pain. It was his way of trying to alleviate the heavy atmosphere between them. "I don't know," he said with a shrug. "My mother says it has something to do with my cousin," he replied honestly, feeling no need to hide anything from the girl. "Cousin?" A grim expression replaced the smile on Naruto's face. Maybe you aren't familiar with him, but his name is Riser Phenex. Don't utter that name here, Phenex. Sona sighed in annoyance as she instantly recognized the owner of that shrill shout. It wasn't hard, to be honest. In the entire underworld, only one person loathed the Phoenixes that much. Riaz, she whispered and turned around to confront her friend. Riaz, who was shooting icy glares at Naruto, suddenly turned her attention towards Suna and smiled, while Naruto, who was gaping at her in awe, instantly felt a bead of sweat forming on his forehead at her strange behavior. Hey. Didn't I tell you to stay away from those Phoenixes? They are bad devils, Riaz exclaimed, frustration evident on her face as her friend ignored her warning and continued standing near the boy. Suna shook her head in exasperation, clearly irritated and weary of her best friend's foolish behavior. Riaz, your problem is with Riser Phenex, not the entire Phenex clan. Please refrain from including them in your naive and unwarranted disdain for Riser. She scolded her in hopes that her friend would finally grasp this point. For a moment, Riaz simply stared at Suna in shock, then a soft murmur escaped her lips. Don't scold me like that. I will follow my heart, teacher Suna. Besides, we're only 7 years old for goodness sake. Stop using such complex vocabulary in front of us. She concluded her little rant with an adorable pout and angrily flicked her hair back. Naruto, who was silently listening to their conversation, couldn't help but nod his head in agreement with Riaz. Even he was confused by the complexity of the words Suna used. Whatever, Riaz, Sona sighed and shifted her attention back to Naruto. Instantly, he stood up straight, sensing her presence. Don't pay attention to her, Naruto. You're more than welcome to join us without any issues, she reassured with a gentle smile gracing her face. Despite the girl's reassuring words and gentle smile, Naruto's relief quickly dissipated as he turned around to join the children in their play, only to be met with stares of distaste and scorn on their faces. Shaking off the negative thoughts, he began walking towards them until a small hand came in his way and stopped him in his tracks. You are not joining us, idiot. Naruto looked over to his side and saw that the owner of the hand was a dark-haired boy, around his age or a little older. Who are you, and why are you stopping me? He asked the boy cautiously, not in the mood to start a fight with a stranger. Because fighting was bad, at least that was what his mother had told him. I'm Ria's friend, Harris Aligos, and I won't allow any Phenex, especially a half-blooded devil like you, to come near our princess. Before Naruto could argue with the boy, a wave of laughter erupted from the surrounding playground, leaving him momentarily speechless. Leave him alone, Harris. My mother told me that he's a very weak child, so delicate that he can't even control the power of his house's legendary fire, exclaimed a small blue-haired girl standing beside the arrogant boy, reveling in the other children's reaction. The newly acquired information only intensified the laughter directed at Naruto, except for Suna and Riaz, who seemed torn about the entire situation. Overwhelmed by the horrid sound of their mocking laughter, Naruto quickly glanced down at the ground to hide his disheartened expression. What did he do to deserve this treatment? He had behaved exactly as his mother had instructed him to. He didn't forget to smile at them and even spoke to them with respect, so why were these children still making fun of him? Was there something wrong with him? Had he done something wrong? Why were all the children rejecting him? All he wanted was to make some friends. Unable to bear their taunting and the weight of their laughter any longer, Naruto lifted his head and looked at the group of children with a fiery glare, red consuming blue in his eyes for a moment. Why are you all laughing at me? I just wanted to play, he responded, directing as much anger as his young mind could muster towards the other children. We refuse to play with a half-devil like you, fool. You are no match for us pure devils. Overcoming the shock and fear of the red eyes, an obese brown-haired boy snarled at Naruto. A single Tomo began to spin ominously in his red pools of hate as Naruto regarded the boy with his sharp gaze. Who said I wanted to play with you, fat pig? His cutting remark pierced through the layers of fat and hit the boy's sensitive heart. I wasn't even talking to you. He added, trying to sound as angry as he could. The ominous red eyes suddenly shifted towards Riaz, who involuntarily stepped back in fear. What's the matter, Riaz? I don't even know you. All I wanted was to make friends, especially since my mother hates it when I'm alone at home. Naruto's outburst ended with a sad frown, causing the chubby boy to tremble in fear and Riaz to recoil in embarrassment. For the first time in her life, Riaz found herself at a loss for words in front of a Phenex. What was she supposed to say now? That she didn't like him solely based on his lineage? No, she could not say that now because it sounded absurd, even to her. I'm sorry, she finally found the words and was about to express her remorse to the boy, but he stopped her. No need to say anything now, Riaz. Naruto whispered in response, suppressing his sadness and meeting Ria's sorrowful gaze with a piercing glare. He suddenly turned his gaze to Harris and the girl with the blue hair. Yes, I am a half-devil, but my mother says that I am better than full ones, so suck it up, you two. More Tomos joined the eerie dance that was transpiring within his eyes. You both wait and watch, I will become stronger than all the devils. He exclaimed as bright tendrils of white and black flames blazed around his slender form, making everyone around him quiver in fear and shame. Satisfied with the results, Naruto turned on his heels to face Mna. I'm sorry for saying bad words, but these idiots were laughing at me for no reason. However, you're one of the good ones, Smna. I wish everyone was cool like you. He smiled and winked at her, although the gesture did not sit well with the poor girl. Thank you, Smna cursed herself for her sudden uncharacteristic stutter and began twirling her fingers to ease her anxiety. Smna. Her eyes were fixed on him and they dilated when he smiled at her once more for some unknown reason. Why yes. She stuttered. Why are you so cool and kind? Dumbfounded, she tilted her head in confusion. How was she cool and kind? She was practically the embodiment of a devil. Oh, the realization finally dawned on her. He was talking about her behavior. I want to study in the human world, Naruto, and that's the reason I'm trying to mimic their ways. She immediately answered before he could embarrass her any further. Naruto blinked at her. The human world. He wanted to go there too. It was at that moment Riaz decided to intervene in their discussion. Yes, human world, Naruto. She smirked at him. Smna and I will be completing our education there, and unlike the devils who don't want to study anything, we will become smart and kind. Her arrogance and teasing tone were hard to ignore and piqued Naruto's curiosity. Riaz and Smna exchanged confused glances as the boy seemed lost in deep thought. Sona. The Citri girl immediately stiffened, as did Riaz. Why yes. Can I accompany you to that school? Naruto asked, giving her the most captivating innocent face ever witnessed. He knew it was the perfect chance, as there was no way humans would refuse his friendship. They were like him, and he was confident that he would make many friends there. Unaware of his inner thoughts and Ria's surprise, Smna smiled faintly at him. Of course, Naruto. I will discuss it with my sister, she replied, undoubtedly pleased to encounter a male from her race who was eager to join her at the school in the human world. Usually, devils would just laugh at her for even thinking about being in the human world. They found it repulsive that someone from their race wanted to be friends with those lowly creatures, but she was open-minded and accepting, and she welcomed everyone who thought the same. Smna, you can't do that. It's a girl-only school. My sister can handle that, Riaz. But. Thank you, Smna. Smna glanced to the side, breaking her gaze from the girl, and realized that Naruto had already reached the entrance of the playground, just a few steps away from completely leaving it. You're welcome, Naruto. Phenex Mansion. Revan, you have to do something about it. The head of the Phenex house groaned in annoyance as his foolish wife spoke those words for the 100th time that day. Seriously, what was wrong with his wife? Couldn't she remain silent for a minute while he did his work? Revan. His piercing blue eyes darted toward her face, narrowing slightly, silently begging her to fall silent. His work demanded his full attention and was far more crucial than her useless child. His lips twisted into a nasty scowl as a vivid image of that scum flashed before his eyes, intensifying his fury even more. That boy was not his child. He would never be, no matter how hard his wife tried to integrate him into their family. That blonde scoundrel was nothing but a disgrace to his household, destined to be discarded sooner or later. It was inevitable, and not even his wife Layla would be able to prevent it. Naruto, as his wife dearly called him, was a constant source of irritation for him. He represented everything that was against his house's image. He was weak, pitiful, and worst of all, overly kind towards everyone. Devils were not supposed to be like that. They were supposed to show power, deceit, and desire, especially when they come from top houses of the underworld, like the Phenex. What are you thinking, Revan? Layla had been observing her husband for a while now, witnessing a range of emotions flickering on and off his face, particularly ones exuding pure malice towards her child. She was aware that the man did not like her child, in fact, nobody did, except for Ruvel, Victoria, and Victoria's newborn baby girl, Ravel, but that didn't justify his disregard for Naruto's suffering. Whether he liked it or not, her child was still a member of their household, and it was Revan's duty to protect him from the baseless discrimination that half-blooded individuals faced in their society. Revan snapped out of his stupor and glanced at his wife. Nothing, he whispered, all the while cursing himself internally for stuttering in front of her. Now she would surely sense that something was wrong. You don't have to act, Revan. She already knew. Fear enveloped his face as his wife's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. What are you insinuating, Layla? He was well aware of what she was trying to insinuate. After all, it was common knowledge that the residents of his household despised Naruto. I know, Revan, Layla whispered, her voice barely audible as she settled down on the chair beside him. I know. Her eyes burned with intense anger for a brief moment before returning to their vibrant blue hue. She didn't want to frighten her husband, at least not while she still needed him to help solve her child's problem. But once that was done, she would have no qualms about burning him alive if he ever tried to harm her child again. His treasured immortality was no match for the power of her flames. Everyone hates him, and you are no exception, Revan. But don't worry, I won't harm you as long as you keep your distance from him. She made sure to emphasize the last part to make him aware of his boundaries. Why do you still love him, Layla? Either get rid of him or keep him as a servant so that our household can be spared from the humiliation he brings upon us every day. He is not deserving of our family name, Revan said, oblivious to the impact his words would have on his wife after her recent statement. Crack. Revan jumped away from the table in surprise when it was engulfed by the unforgiving flames of his wife. You never learn, do you, Revan? His blue eyes shot wide in fear when searing golden flames flickered behind the graceful silhouette of his wife. After all these years, you still have not grown up. As the shimmering hot flames then unfurled around her, an ominous presence started to take form within them. Wings. Revan knew exactly what that meant. It was the symbol that he and his family carried proudly in their names, honoring their legacy. Phoenix's whole body tensed up as a pair of wicked piercing blue eyes locked onto him amidst the raging storm. They were truly terrifying. I have told you numerous times, Revan, if you are unable to love my child, then at least do not hate him, Layla whispered. Her words were almost inaudible due to the fear that had filled the room moments ago. But you never understood a single thing. Years have passed, yet your attitude toward my child remains unchanged. And now. She let her words linger in the air, leaving her husband to decipher them for himself. And now? The frustration intensified as he was unable to do so. I've had enough of you and these devils. I loathe them from the depths of my heart. Their mere existence enrages me. The way they insult and harm my child makes me want to destroy them, Revan. With each word she uttered, a torrent of fire erupted, aimed at the random objects scattered throughout the opulent room. She wanted to hurt her husband, Revan, too, but that would have meant attracting the attention of the entire underworld, and she didn't want that, at least not yet. Are you out of your mind, Layla? The surprise and shock in his voice shook his wife out of her daze. You can't just make such statements. Do you even realize what you just said? If you ever harm anyone over someone as trivial as Naruto, it will only fuel more hatred towards him. The storm around began to settle down. Hate. She lowered her head, and a sinister giggle escaped her lips, putting Revan on edge. When did they ever love him? As far as I can remember, he has always been hated by those foul creatures. Her whisper filled the room with coldness. My child has nothing to lose, Revan. The only person who truly loves him in this entire world is me and only me. Her bold statement elicited a piercing gaze from her husband. Foul creatures. Are you truly insulting your own kind for a mere human child, Layla? Layla finally raised her head, and what Revan saw would forever haunt his dreams. Hate. It was spread all over her face, the subsequent actions ready to be unleashed upon anyone who dared to tread close to her and her child. It was the first time he had seen such a vile emotion on her face, for Layla was a woman who knew how to keep her emotions in check. Insignificant. Her lips parted into a snarl as she whispered those cold words, causing Revan to squirm and shiver in fear. Do you truly believe that my child is insignificant to me? Their eyes met and for a second, he found himself lost in them. They were beautiful yet dangerous at the same time. The boy whom I poured my heart and soul into, cherishing with all my love and care, nourished with my invaluable breast milk, and shielded from every wicked elder of our house, is insignificant to me. Revan rose gracefully from his chair, his gaze fixed upon her. However, he halted abruptly as the lady delicately extended her hand, signaling him to keep his distance. Layla, his eyes softened, entranced by the ethereal beauty of his beloved wife. I did not intend. I couldn't care less about your intentions, Revan Phenex. Her words shocked him completely, as it was the first time Layla had addressed him by his full name. Not once in the past had she called him in such a manner, with such contempt. Nor do I concern myself with the opinions of those repulsive and petty beings regarding me and my child. The only things that concern me are the well-being and security of my child, Naruto. That's it. The underworld and its inhabitants can die for all I care. I bear no sentiments towards them, and that includes you, Revan Phenex. Layla. The anger flashed across her face. Watch your tongue, Revan. I'm not one of those human slaves of yours who would passively endure insults or harm. I am Layla Phenex, and remember, I would even face off against Lucifer if it meant protecting my child. With a final cold glare, enough to send shivers down anyone's spine, she concluded her statement. Revan was confused, unable to understand what was happening to his beloved wife. Once serene and beautiful, she was now a mere shadow of her former self. That child had stolen his wife away from him, and he was determined to win her back at any cost. Layla, please calm down. The words you are speaking do not suit you. They are completely crazy, and you must realize that you cannot continue in this manner. Layla, you are my beloved wife. Was. A pang of pain gripped his heart. What? He stammered, desperately hoping that what he had just heard was not true. Layla rose gracefully from her seat, her luscious locks cascading over her captivating eyes and stunning face. I said I was your wife, Revan. Layla. Now, I'm just Layla, a woman determined to create a better life for her child, away from this literal and emotional hell. Revan's heart sank to indefinite depths as his wife, his ever-beautiful Layla, brought her hand to her finger and revealed the remnants of their shattered marriage. A beautiful and precious diamond ring. I have given you countless chances, Revan Phenex, but you have consistently disappointed me, and now I have no more tolerance to offer you any longer. But, Layla. I hope you burn under the holiest light there is, Revan Phenex. Ooh. As Naruto observed his mother calmly packing their luggage in the corner, he couldn't help but ponder about the reason behind it all. As soon as he had returned from the playground, after engaging in a heated argument with the other children, his mother had welcomed him home with a warm smile and told him to gather his belongings as quickly as possible. Confused by the sudden change, he attempted to inquire about the situation, but she adamantly refused to answer his question. After a brief but loud argument, he eventually accepted his defeat and decided to do whatever the lady had instructed him to do. Can you please tell me at least where we are going, Mama? He looked at the lady once again, a glimmer of hope in his eyes as he eagerly awaited a response. Layla, still in the middle of packing her luggage, decided to take a break and looked over at her child. A small smile tugged at her lips as he gazed at her with concern. He was so cute, she mentally squealed to herself but remained quiet on the outside. A place very far away from here, Naruto. She finally spoke and had to hold herself from laughing out loud when her child pouted at her, as if her answer did not please him. Oh, don't play with me like this, Mama, and tell me where we are going. I want to know so badly. The stunning blonde delicately rested her index finger on her chin, deep in thought. I think we are going into the realm of humans. Wait, human world. Her smile widened as she witnessed Naruto's reaction to her revelation. It was evident that he was genuinely pleased with the new information, and this alone brought her joy as well. After all, his happiness was her happiness. Do you like the idea, Naruto? She asked, giggling as the boy frantically nodded in agreement. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Why are we moving there? Came the inevitable question from his mouth, a question that left Layla contemplating in silence for quite some time. Because. Naruto blinked at his mother. Because. Layla fell into an uneasy silence, her mind grappling to find the right words to answer her child's query. How could she possibly explain the events that had unfolded in her ex-husband's office today? Revealing the truth would only burden him with sadness. Then her thoughts paused as a sweet memory resurfaced in her mind. Mama. You've always dreamed of starting a family with mommy, haven't you, Naruto? The wave of red flooded Naruto's cheeks as soon as his mother uttered those words. He gulped when his mother flashed him a coy smile. I was foolish. Well, then I'm helping you to fulfill your dream. In our new home, you can have mommy all to yourself, Naruto, she added with a saucy wink. Naruto felt his mind going numb. From now on, I am yours and yours alone, Naruto. She said, with no hint of teasing this time. The Phenex residence was an elegant estate situated on the outskirts of the beautiful town of Kuo. Surrounded by a rich variety of flora and fauna, the manor exemplified exquisite craftsmanship and meticulous attention to detail. The garden of the modestly sized manor was currently home to the dynamic mother-son duo, Layla and Naruto. They were both tending to the garden, eagerly working together to enhance its beauty. Their recent trip to the nursery resulted in an assortment of new plants, which they were excited to add to their growing collection. Here, let me help you, Naruto. Layla, the beautiful mother of Naruto, whispered as she took the saplings from her son's hand and placed them in a small pit that she had prepared beforehand. You must carefully place them in the pits, otherwise, their chances of survival will decrease significantly. Her eyes, fixed on the saplings a moment ago, now shifted towards her son, who was observing her attentively with a faint pout on his lips. She raised her left hand slightly and gently moved it toward her son's face, playfully squeezing his cheek between her fingers. Is little Naruto angry with his mama? She asked, a warm smile spreading across her face as he attempted to avoid her gaze. I'm not angry. Naruto huffed, his eyes trying their best to remain away from her beautiful face. It was magnetic, at least, that's what the boys from Kuo Academy had told him when they first saw her. The fact that it came from them irked him greatly for some reason. I'm just frustrated because I can't do it as well as you do. His whining earned him a beatific smile from his mother, one that could melt ice if it wanted to. Because you are still a child, Naruto, and children take time to learn things. The pout on Naruto's lips grew even larger. But I'm already 10 years old, Mom. He grumbled, clearly displeased with the fact that he still couldn't assist his mother in gardening, which happened to be her favorite pastime. Layla released her hold on his cheek and blinked in surprise when she realized that she had left dirty marks. She smiled to herself for her small slip-up and gently reached out her other hand to clean her child's face, all the while softly humming a comforting hymn. "Did you even listen to what I just said, Mom?" Naruto looked at her hopefully but was met with disappointing silence when his mother failed to answer his question again. It seemed as though she was deliberately toying with him, which was, of course, her typical pastime, teasing and annoying her son. "Fine, don't answer me." He pushed her hand away from his face and began to mutter something under his breath. "Naruto." The boy ignored her words and kept sulking with his face down. "Naruto," Layla whispered, once again met with nothing but silence from her child. Summoning her most warm tone, she leaned closer and whispered into his ear, ensuring that her voice resonated within him. "Oh, are you intentionally ignoring your own mother?" "Yes." Naruto was also not faring well. No matter how hard he tried to appear angry, deep inside, he knew he could never get, let alone stay, angry at her. It was simply impossible for him to do so because she was his family, or whatever remained of it. Since he learned to understand more nuanced concepts, his mother has never left his side, not even when that man tried to take her away from him. Her love for him surpassed anything he had ever witnessed, whether in fiction or in reality. So, getting mad at her was impossible. Instead, he had to put on an act in front of her and hope that she would fall for it, even though the chance was very slim. "Really?" Naruto nodded his head eagerly and was about to say something, but his words were caught in his throat as a pair of hands enveloped his small body in a comforting hug from behind. It was truly incredible, as always. "Is this enough to change your mind?" He did not need to turn his head to know that her mom had a teasing smile on her face. "No." He refuted. "Then, this?" Layla inquired, gently pressing a kiss to his right cheek, careful not to soil them with dirt once more. Naruto gasped, his face starting to flush with red. "What are you doing?" he yelled, trying to sound annoyed, but his mother effortlessly caught the hint of affection hidden within his voice. "I know you secretly love it, Naruto. So do not attempt to play tough in front of me. The more you try to resist, the more I will enjoy teasing you. Love it?" The boy blurted out in fabricated shock. "What are you talking about, Mom? I don't like your kisses. They're embarrassing, especially when you do it in front of the school gate in the morning." He pitifully whined. Layla let out a mischievous laugh, her plump red lips curling into a sly smile. "Oh dear, I had no idea my actions were causing you such embarrassment, Naruto. If only you had mentioned it earlier." Her slender finger traced a path down his cheek, sending a tremor of unease through him. "Then what?" Naruto asked her, fearing the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Layla tilted her head and rested her chin on his shoulder, her mouth just an inch from his ear. "Then I would have teased you even more," she exclaimed, punctuating her words with a playful wink. Her laughter echoed softly as she watched his face turn a sudden shade of crimson. I never mind." Who was he kidding? His mother was a relentless teaser when it came to him, and there was no way she was going to change anytime soon. Expecting something innocent to come out of her mouth was as futile as expecting his cousin Riser to distinguish between friendship and slavery as two distinct concepts. Huh? He snapped out of his stupor and glanced at his mother, who was looking at him in utter confusion, probably because he had ignored her yet again for more than 5 seconds. "I said I don't have faith in you anymore, Mom," he whispered. Layla narrowed her gaze, urging him to proceed with his statement. However, as he remained silent, she made up her mind to ask him once more. "Why have you lost faith in me?" Her voice was a little softer this time, conveying a hint of tenderness, as she did not want to tease him any longer. "Not in you, but in your behavior. You are a hopeless tease, Mother." Everything finally made sense in her mind, and when it did, she quickly turned to him and gave a sly smile. "You are acting as if you are any better, Naruto," she fired back, causing her child to gasp in surprise. What do you mean by that?" "I'm not a tease, Mom." Her smirk widened, causing Naruto to instinctively take a step back. He knew all too well what that smile meant. Impending embarrassment was on its way. "Have you forgotten about your extreme fondness for maids and their dresses, huh, my little Naruto?" And she did not disappoint. From the depths of the valley of his darkest secrets, she unveiled the one that consistently caused him the most humiliation. Naruto's face flushed with embarrassment as he gulped, desperately trying to hide his true emotions. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Mom." He protested, denying any knowledge of the situation. "Really?" He paused for a second before offering a lame denial. "Why yes." Layla could not hold back any longer. She placed a hand on her abdomen and burst into loud laughter at her son's expense. Her amusement grew even more as Naruto began to sputter incoherently, trying desperately to prevent her from further embarrassing him. His efforts only fueled her laughter even more. Although she was currently teasing him, moments like these never failed to remind her of how much her life had improved since he entered it. Prior to him, her life had been dull and uneventful, like plain porridge. However, when she found him, he changed everything for her. He filled her life with a vibrant array of happiness and love. Now, Layla couldn't fathom a life without Naruto, it felt simply empty without his presence. "Boy, are you even listening to me, Mom?" Naruto's weak outcry brought her out of her stupor. "What?" She blinked at him, confusion evident in her voice. "Nothing." Over the past few years, Layla had gained a deep understanding of her child's behavior and interests. Therefore, when she noticed a scowl on his face, she instantly recognized it as a sign of sadness. But what was the cause? This was something she was determined to know. "What's wrong, Naruto? Why the sudden sadness on your face?" She asked gently, not wanting to upset him even more. "I don't understand what you're talking about, Mom." "I am okay, Mom," Naruto tried to argue, but as his mother embraced him from behind and rested her chin on his left shoulder, he realized he was losing the battle. It was difficult to resist her when she showed such affection. Now, if you are sad because I made fun of your fondness for maids, then I promise I will not do that ever again, Naruto." Feeling a sense of comfort, the boy relaxed within her warm embrace and leaned against her, his cheeks tinged with a gentle blush as he enjoyed the softness of her embrace. "I'm not sad because of that, Mom," he said, shaking himself out of his inappropriate thoughts. Then, Naruto paused for a moment, letting out an uneasy sigh. "I can't quite put it into words, Mom, but when I see you doing all these chores by yourself, I can't help but feel awful." He cast his eyes down, his fingers twisting in uncertainty. "I feel like I'm useless because you have to do everything yourself and there's no one here to help you. That's why I try to help you all the time, but my body always gives up." The pain in his voice was as undeniable as the sun in the sky above. There was no way he was pretending those emotions. Layla, who was listening to his every word with undivided attention, gasped slightly in grief. "Naruto," she looked down at her child and had to hold herself back from sobbing loudly when he peeked at her with those beautiful and moist blue eyes of his. "My Naruto." Overwhelmed with emotions, she embraced him tightly, catching the boy off guard with her unexpected display of affection. "You don't have to worry about a thing, my child. I could never feel lonely when you're by my side. You are everything I need, Naruto," she whispered, her gentle voice easing the ache in the boy's heart. Both the mother and son stayed locked in that position for a while until Naruto suddenly freed himself from his mother's embrace, surprising her with his quick and effortless movement. But then again, Naruto was no ordinary child either. He was special, very special when it came to flames and their uses. His mastery of fire was unparalleled, so much so that those foolish residents of the underworld often mistook him for her own son, a fact that pleased her greatly. Although considering what she did to ensure her baby boy grew up to become healthy and full of vitality, those ignorant people were not entirely wrong. Speaking of unique flames and abilities, Layla still did not know how her son was able to inherit her flames. Was it from her milk? Or was it from her queen piece and that demon? She still could not understand, but one thing was clear. He was incredibly amazing with them. Naruto's natural talent and his beautiful red eyes always ensured that he was able to control his colorful flames just the way he wanted. Like her, he could effortlessly mold various shapes and semi-sentient creatures with those flames. That fact alone was reason enough for her to feel proud. Still, her mind refused to forget those haunting red eyes, wishing to unravel their mysteries. Why was it that only her son could wield them, and why had she never seen them anywhere else before? Were they one of those foolish sacred gears? She hoped not, because if that were the case, fallen angels and devils would never leave him alone. "Whoa." Layla was taken aback as Naruto's unmistakably warm voice reached her ears. Confused, she lowered her head slightly to look at him and gasped at the alarming sight before her. Right in front of her stood a magnificent tree, towering over the spot where she had planted a small sapling some time ago. Its branches were adorned with stunning leaves that danced gracefully in the soft breeze. "Then Naruto, what have you done?" She could only ask, her mind paralyzed with shock. Naruto stared at his mother, his heart pounding with both fear and excitement. "I don't know, Mom. I was just playing with it by using my energy," he replied, his words filled with a sense of wonder and curiosity. "Oh," Layla whispered, sounding very tired for some reason. Now, she had an additional reason to safeguard her child from supernatural entities. Ooh. Getting ready and walking to school on his own was always a drag for Naruto. Normally, his mother would accompany him to school. However, there were occasional days when she would either be too occupied or exhausted to accompany him. Unfortunately, today was one of those cursed days. Regardless of what Naruto may say about his mother's obsession with him and his life, deep down, over the years, he had come to appreciate the affection she showered on him. Her teasing and actions, no matter how strange they might seem to others, had become an essential part of his existence. He had become accustomed to her teasing, and now he dreads a day without it, along with the smile she would flash him afterward. An obsessive beautiful mother and an innocent child, huh? Turns out these two things did not go well with each other and Naruto himself was a prime example of that notion. But then again, she doesn't have anyone else to talk to. She left behind everyone else for me. The guilt he felt earlier returned, this time even more merciless than before. As teasing and childish as she might be, Naruto knew that his mother was a truly kind woman, even more so than the angels above. He firmly believed that she had been born into the wrong faction by mistake, she was meant to be an angel, not a devil. The devils were malicious and cunning beings, always driven by their self-interest. They showed little concern for anyone, not even their own kin. Their insatiable thirst for power was widely known, and they were overly willing to make sacrifices for it, whether in the form of humans or other devils. His mother was different from them. She was unique, far more than he could fully understand at this very moment. Unlike those horrible beings who callously disposed of others, his mother willingly gave up her life of luxury for him. She left her home, parents, and even her prominent clan and husband for him. Why? He still did not know, but that fact alone was enough to make him incredibly happy. He knew she would always be there for him, no matter what. Naruto. The voice brought Naruto out of his surprisingly mature thoughts, and his blue eyes sparkled with mirth when he heard a familiar call. It was warm and delightful as usual. Sona he turned his head slightly and smiled as the beautiful face of his friend came into view. Naruto Suna whispered, her gaze never leaving the young boy. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at school by now? Naruto interrupted, not allowing her to continue whatever she was about to say. The girl turned away her gaze from him, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks for a moment. I'm not, she started, but her explanation was abruptly halted by her best friend's interruption. Yes, she is, but she wanted to meet you, Naruto. Without taking his eyes off the black-haired girl, Naruto blinked in surprise when he noticed another familiar face standing beside him. How? His mind briefly stopped, surprised at how the girl had gotten so close without him noticing her presence. Riaz. He remembered her name from that meeting years ago. What brings you here? His question was punctuated by a slight tilt of his head as confusion colored his voice. Normally, Sona would always come alone to meet him before school, especially when his mother was not accompanying him. There had never been a single day when she had brought someone with her, so seeing Riaz by his side was quite unexpected. Nothing. I just decided to tag along with her. Liar. Riaz's eyes twitched slightly. I'm not lying, Sna, she said with a smile, but there was nothing placid about it. Behind that smile lay only irritation and annoyance. Sure. The twitching intensified, however, Riaz maintained her composure to avoid uttering anything foolish in front of the two individuals. Naruto had witnessed her acting irrationally without any reason in the past, and she was determined not to repeat the same mistake. She wanted to show that she was mature and friendly, especially when she was with someone who never called her princess or Gremory. The boy may not have realized it, but when he first met her and uttered those harsh words, he caused her to recognize her own foolishness and immaturity for holding a grudge against the entire Phenex clan because of one person. So, to make amends, she started treating everyone with an open mind, hoping the boy would one day see her changed mindset and forgive her. Unfortunately, her dreams were shattered when she heard the news that one of the wife of Lord Phenex had left the underworld with her child for unknown reasons. At first, Riaz couldn't understand why someone would leave the underworld, but as the days passed, she began to realize that her realm was not the utopia she had believed it to be. It had its pros and cons, something Lady Layla surely took into consideration before deciding on her course of action. Riaz. Her eyes snapped open and dilated as they locked with his piercing blue gaze. And Naruto, she stammered, her mind suddenly blank, all previous thoughts forgotten. Between her deep thoughts, she completely forgot about the fact that her heart, for some reason, liked the boy to no end. It was like it wanted him and him only. That's one of the main reasons she decided to accompany Suna this morning. Her heart yearned to see Naruto after all those years, and she was grateful that the logical part of her brain allowed it. The boy was still kind and positive, despite the impact of her influence on his social life in the underworld. Are you okay? The girl stumbled and almost fell backwards when the boy leaned towards her. I'm fine. She squeaked, at a loss for a satisfactory response to his inquiry. Oh, but you are looking. Sna, who had been observing her friends from afar, couldn't resist intervening upon witnessing the overwhelming attention Riaz was receiving from Naruto. It was completely unacceptable, especially considering the fact that she was standing right next to him. Naruto was her dear friend, for goodness sake. She is fine, Naruto. Let her be, she firmly said, completely unaffected by the hurt, anger, and irritation in Ria's expression, showing no regard for it. Naruto shifted his gaze towards Suna and nodded. Okay, Suna, he replied, smiling as she adjusted her glasses. She always looked so cute when she did that. Sona felt his gaze upon her and blushed slightly when she saw a smile blossom on his face. It was infectious, just like the countless other smiles he had flashed at her before. His smile never failed to make her mirror it. "Anyway," she began, "I talked to my sister about your enrollment, Naruto." Her voice plummeted as she recalled the heated discussion she had with her elder sister, Serapho. It was less of a productive conversation and more of a clash of opinions. All they traded were bitter arguments and senseless taunts. Why? She was infuriated when her sister, the foreign minister of the underworld, declined to admit her friend to their school. Just that one statement was sufficient to unleash Sona's wrath, causing her to lose all sense of composure. She relentlessly bombarded her sister with a barrage of cold words, arguing one point after another. If there was one thing she despised more than anything else, it was when someone disregarded her nicely crafted logical recommendations. Naruto's enrollment was not only essential because he was her friend, but also because he was Lady Layla's son. The social and political status in which he had been raised virtually ensured that mothers of other influential successors would waste no time in sending their own children to the human realm upon learning that one of the most powerful women in the underworld had chosen to enroll her own child in a human school. What did she say? Naruto's loud shout brought her out of her thoughts. Steeling herself, she looked at the boy and cringed when she realized what she was about to do. He would be angry, there was no way he would not be after hearing her words. She refused. "Alright." "What?" she exclaimed, blinking in surprise. Naruto smiled at her and gently tousled her hair. "I said it's alright. I'm sure you did your best, Suna," he replied. Sona was left speechless. For the first time in her life, she found herself at a loss for words. What had just happened? Why didn't Naruto get angry at her sister? Questions like these flooded her mind at that moment. "Are you not angry at my sister, Naruto?" She finally mustered the courage to ask him, desperate for insight into how he managed to remain calm while she, the typically compass Smna Citri, found it difficult to do the same. "Why would I ever be angry with your sister, Smna?" Naruto asked, tilting his head in genuine confusion. "I'm sure there must have been very valid reasons behind her actions, you know. But also, she is beautiful and friendly. I can never get angry at such a person." Her wonder at her friend's maturity came to an abrupt stop. "Be beautiful," Smna almost asked for further explanation of that particular phrase, but she was interrupted by the infectious laughter of her friend Riaz. Haha. Riaz was having the time of her life. She never imagined that there would come a day when someone could get under Smna's skin like that. As calm as her friend might appear on the outside, Riaz was sure that Smna was internally fuming because there was no way her friend would appreciate that compliment about her sister from Naruto. "What is so funny, Riaz?" The Gremory girl gazed at her friend, a knowing smirk spreading across her face. "It's nothing, Smna." Nothing at all. The smirk grew even wider as Smna shot her a glare of frustration. Naruto, who was carefully observing both girls, sensed that something crazy was about to unfold. Being the intelligent young man he was, he quickly made the wise decision to take his leave. I think I should be going now. School is about to start and I don't want to be late again." He murmured softly, hoping that they would hear him somehow. "Okay, Naruto." Again, "I'm sorry." Naruto paused in his stroll. I'm not upset at all, Smna. I can always enroll in your school when it becomes co-ed, you know." Sona looked away from him. I. The girl whispered under her breath. "Bye, Naruto." His feet came to a halt once more, this time due to the presence of the red-haired girl. Glancing over his shoulder, he gently nodded his head at her. "Goodbye, Riaz." Riaz did not hesitate and smiled at him, her smile radiating more warmth than the sun itself. "School. Of course, I was destined to be placed beside her." An utterly frightened and disgruntled Naruto grumbled to himself as he stared at the brown-haired girl who was sitting beside him, cheerfully smiling and staring at the random boys passing by their table. Of all the girls in the school, why was he paired with her today? Didn't the teacher know who this girl was? Pervert. The girl had already become a full-fledged pervert at the tender age of 10. Naruto had noticed the longing glances she always cast towards older boys whenever they visited their class. And trust him, those boys were trouble. Serious trouble. "Hey." Naruto gulped when the girl finally opened her mouth. "Hey, you." Sighing loudly, he finally glanced at the girl and blinked when he saw nothing but curiosity on her face. Strange, he noted, as the girl usually just yells at people when they try to ignore her. It was quite surprising to see her so silent, especially since she was sitting right beside him. Naruto was certain that if she were to start a conversation, it would be about some random model or a female senpai. It turned out today was not the case. "Yes." Naruto eventually replied to her. "What is your name?" Once more, he was taken aback by her unusual behavior. What could possibly be the matter with her today? "Naruto," he muttered, before deciding to respond to her question. But not without posing one of his own. And how is it possible that you don't know my name after months of being in the same class? The girl recoiled in panic, leaving him feeling guilty for his response. I never paid any attention to you or any other student in our class, she murmured, her vulnerable and timid voice intensifying his guilt. I see. The girl lowered her head and hummed. Naruto sensed that the conversation had reached a pause, but for some reason, he wanted to keep it going. He felt a growing curiosity about her. But why? Why don't you talk with your classmates? He inquired, eager to revive their exchange. Because they don't like me, came her blunt and immediate response. And just like that, his heart shattered into a million pieces. She has no friends, he grimaced, feeling a strong sense of familiarity with her situation. They don't like me, mama. They fear my eyes and make fun of me because I'm a reincarnated devil. He was about to speak, but paused when he noticed she was about to speak again. They make fun of me. For what? Every thought fled from his mind when she suddenly glanced at him, locking her gaze with his enchanting blue eyes. It's because I hang out with older boys. Before he could explore deeper into her mesmerizing eyes, the girl quickly averted her gaze, burying her face in her hands on the table. Older boys. Naruto visibly cringed at that response. His young mind couldn't fathom the intentions of those older boys who were spending time with an innocent pubescent girl. You know, he paused a little before continuing, my mom says that it's always better to be cautious and not hang out with strangers, especially if they are older than you. A small smile bloomed on his face when she peeked at him from the space between her hands. But they are the only ones who hang out with me and never make fun of me. And how was he supposed to dismantle that twisted logic? He also had a lonely childhood, but with time and the love of his mother, he gained wisdom that was not often seen in young children. One crucial lesson he learned was that, more often than not, individuals in vulnerable emotional states tend to be exploited. You should try to make friends. I'm sure you will find people much better than those older boys. His compassionate nature urged him to persuade the girl to reconsider her current path to prevent anything unfortunate from happening to her as a result. Who would like to be a friend with someone like me? Most of the children here don't even know my name. I know your name. The girl lifted her head slightly. You do? She asked, with a glimmer of hope finally emerging in her voice. Naruto frantically nodded his head. Kyoko Haidu. He firmly answered. Makoto's face emerged from the confinement of her arms and she cast a clear glance at the boy, a faint smile appearing on her face as she did so. Then will you be my friend? The suffocating silence fell upon the two for a second, but before Kyoko could misinterpret the tension, Naruto stopped her by placing his hand on hers. Of course I'll be your friend. I see. In an empty hallway, with his clique rambling behind him, the leader of the aforementioned teenage boys scowled fiercely all of a sudden, perplexed by the unexpected response. Kyoko Haidu never had the opportunity to experience the joy of having friends. The idea of going outside her comfort zone and striking up conversations with strangers was foreign to her and something she strongly disliked. In the past, when she was a gullible and cheerful child, she tried to make a few friends. Unfortunately, those children didn't like how shy and awkward she was. Everywhere she went, an overwhelming sense of rejection accompanied her, casting her life in the hues of loneliness and sorrow. Damaged and defeated, her tiny heart gradually grew accustomed to the pain and resigned itself to the fact that she would never make any friends. But everything changed when she met him, a boy much older than her, who always wore a dazzlingly bright smile on his beautiful face. Shiro. He became her anchor, someone who rescued her from the abyss of loneliness and self-hatred by providing her with the one thing she yearned for the most. A friend. Shiro became her friend, the only person in the world who accepted her just as she was and never complained about anything. Sure, he was a little older than her, but she didn't care at the time. All she wanted was someone to hang out with, regardless of age. Despite everyone's warnings, she refused to distance herself from him. After all, they had never been there for her during those lonely moments when she desperately needed support. They were not there when she was eating alone at her school desk, nor were they there when she walked home with no one to accompany her. They were never there. She refused to listen to them when someone finally decided to stand by her. Shiro changed her life, not only by offering his help and support, but also by introducing her to more of his friends. Before she knew it, she was surrounded by numerous unfamiliar individuals who were eager to become her friends. Surprisingly, all of them happened to be boys, but she paid no mind to it as every single one of them exhibited remarkable kindness. Too nice. Over the next few years, they generously helped her with various tasks. Homework, projects, and even her classes. As if that weren't enough, they didn't hesitate to play various games with her, and their favorite was one that involved touching her body frequently. She didn't like it at all, as it made her very uncomfortable. However, she never complained about it because she feared that they would leave her if she did. Their friendships were precious to her, like treasures she was determined not to lose at any cost, since they were the only friends she had. Everyone else had left her side long ago, including her mother and father. She was practically dead to her parents, since they refused to have a child who associated with a group of students who were significantly older than her. She couldn't blame them for it though, because she knew how society judged and treated parents who had daughters like her. So, to spare them from more embarrassment, she isolated herself in her own imaginary world, a place distant from reality and them, where no one could disturb her and her friends. For the first time in her life, she was truly happy to be alive because she had everything she wanted. Everything. Until she uncovered the dark secret of her best friend, Shiro. He was a maniac, a monster worse than those found in fairy tales, and his companions were no different. All of them were wicked individuals with such evil intentions that her soul froze when she first heard about them from her classmates. Predators. That's what the girl from her class had called them when she first saw her with them. At first, she was confused as to why someone would call her friends predators. However, as time passed, she began to realize that the girl's observation was not entirely unfounded. The people she had considered her friends for years were actually despicable individuals who took pleasure in the suffering of young girls like her. She couldn't believe she hadn't noticed it before, although deep down, she knew. But, after that eye-opening day, every action those individuals had taken against her body revealed itself to her for what they truly were: immoral and unlawful. Afraid for her safety and deeply concerned about the harm to her reputation, which, to a great extent, was caused by her own actions, she made the choice to separate herself from them. Unfortunately, this strategy proved futile, as they refused to leave her alone. She was their prey, and like pests, they began to follow her everywhere, even to her house. No matter what she did, she couldn't keep them away, and soon enough, she found herself trapped in another hell, one of her own making. Months passed, yet no one came out to help her, not even her own parents, who refused to seek help from the police, for they were aware that the boys possessed unimaginable wealth and influence. Using corrupt methods to get out of trouble was not unfamiliar to them. She had witnessed them doing it countless times when they were friends, and she was certain they would do it again if necessary. Realizing that nothing but suffering awaited her in the coming years, she made the decision to accept it with a sorrowful smile on her face. There was nothing new here. Countless girls like her were going through the same thing at the hands of other monsters, and she was no different. So with tears in her eyes and a fake smile on her face, she endured everything that those monsters did to her. Touching. Groping. Abuse. They did everything to her and would have completed the final act as well, but they refrained because they considered her too beautiful, young, and important for that. She was their favorite, and they were unwilling to take any chances that could cause permanent physical damage to their beloved toy. Too young. Was she not too young for everything else they did to her? The memories of those atrocities had been etched deeply in her mind, leaving a permanent stain on her delicate psyche and haunting her ever since. In her quest for light in a world cloaked in darkness, she ended up falling even deeper into a void far more insidious than the one she had known before. The pain she felt when she was alone paled in comparison to the pain inflicted upon her by those individuals. It was indescribable, far more agonizing than words could ever capture. Even if she could, she had nobody to speak to. Aside from those cruel individuals, no one cared about her existence, not even a single soul, and that fact filled her heart with overwhelming misery and sadness. What was the point of living if people around you didn't even know anything about you? Her classmates, the people who had spent an entire summer with her in that boring room, were completely unaware of her presence. She was sure that they wouldn't even be able to recall her name accurately if questioned. Then again, she had never been noticed by anyone, to begin with. Since her lonely childhood, she had been subjected to nothing but bullying and constant dismissals. Unlike those rich and vibrant people who could make friends in an instant, she was miserable and shy. Her life seemed destined for tragedy, or so she had once believed, until she met him. The boy with hair as bright as the sun and eyes as blue as the deepest ocean, those were the physical traits that she couldn't help but notice when she first saw him. He was different, something she quickly noticed. Unlike others, he didn't mock students like her, instead, he even helped a few of them who were struggling to make new friends. However, that was not what made him stand out in her eyes, not at all. The thing that made him different was his lack of response to her perverse attitude towards older boys. When he first saw her with those boys, she anticipated a barrage of negative reactions from him, such as hate, disgust, and even taunting. However, he completely surprised her with the beautiful smile he flashed her that day. It was incredibly heartwarming and, for once, after such a long time, it made her genuinely happy for some reason. However, as they say, all good things must come to an end, and her happiness was no exception. In a matter of days, she watched him become engulfed by a sea of countless cold-hearted individuals who showed no concern for their classmates or her well-being. although it hurt a little at first, she never dwelled on it much as she was already consumed by the persistent troubles in the form of those boys. Everything returned to how it was before the day she first laid eyes on that blonde-haired boy. Before she knew it, she found herself begging and crying in front of her tormentors once more. As always, they never listened to her appeals, but at that moment, it was all she could do, as there was little, if any, hope left in her heart. But fate decided to alter her life once again. How? By placing her right beside the ray of hope that could save her from the darkness of her life. Naruto. That was his name, and she was determined not to forget it at any cost. It was the only name she had made an effort to memorize in a long time. The immense surprise and joy that filled her heart when the teacher asked her to sit beside him were beyond imagination. It felt like she had been presented with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, one that she simply couldn't pass up, no matter what. And that she did. Ignoring the fear of rejection that tried to make her stop talking and look away from him, she bravely chose to strike up a conversation, hoping that he wouldn't ignore her like others had done. He didn't disappoint. No matter what he might have thought about her after listening to her classmates, he still had the decency not to ignore her like them. Being the compassionate individual that he was, he chose to have a conversation with her, even going as far as to talk about her feelings of loneliness and her connection with those boys. But nothing in the world could have prepared her for what he did next. "I will be your friend, Kyoko." He offered her an invaluable thing. His friendship. Kyoko? Ha! Brown silky hair soared through the air as Kyoko, taken by surprise, lost her balance and crashed to the ground, all thanks to the oblivious Naruto Phenex. Oh, where she let out a slight groan as a jolt of pain shot through her backside from the impact. It hurt, but not too much. She had endured much worse without even flinching. "I'm sorry." She interrupted the stunned boy by waving her hand dismissively. "It's okay, Naruto. I'm fine." Her words were cut short as the boy decided to interrupt her by sitting beside her and placing a hand on her bruised knees. Before she knew it, his other hand was already deep inside his bag, searching for something. "Ah!" Naruto exclaimed in excitement as he finally laid his eyes on the object of his search. "Here it is." His eyes sparkled with joy as he gazed at the healing cream cradled in his palm. It was something that his mother had always placed in his bag so that he could patch himself up if he ever got injured. Fortunately, that never happened. "Let me apply this cream to your knees and your pain will vanish in a second," he said cheerfully, moving his fingers covered in cream toward her knee. However, he blinked in concern when she recoiled immediately. "What's wrong, Kyoko?" he asked, but received no answer. Confused, he looked up at her face and gasped when he saw tears streaming down. They were a bitter sight to look at, stirring a momentary concern for her well-being. "Are you uncomfortable with my touch? If so, you can apply it yourself." "I won't be mind," he suggested, but once again, he was met with silence from her. What's wrong with her? Naruto couldn't help but notice the sudden shift in her demeanor. She was not typically a timid individual, not in the slightest. "I am fine, Naruto." The amount of uncertainty and fear in her voice as a result of her sudden change in demeanor put Naruto on edge, something he was thankful for since his mother had pushed him to become quite skilled at deciphering people's motives. Summoning his courage, he once again attempted to apply the soothing cream to her knees. However, like previously, the girl instinctively withdrew as soon as he reached out his hand. Fear. Embarrassment. Guilt. He could see them flowing through her eyes, those same beautiful brown orbs that were trying to shield from his gaze at all costs. What made her so shy and uncomfortable all of a sudden? Is it my presence? Naruto hoped not, otherwise, there would be no way he could force himself to remain close to her, and if that happened, she would run back to those vultures. Vultures? A sudden burst of dark alien emotion flashed through his eyes at the thought of those boys. He was sure that it was all because of them that she was in this state. Kyoko might not have told him or anyone else about those monsters out of fear, but Naruto was absolutely certain that they were doing inappropriate things to her. Otherwise, there was no way boys of their age would be hanging out with a girl as young as her. It was disturbing and despicable, and he could no longer stand by and not intervene when someone he cared about could very well be in danger because of them. "I won't hurt you, Kyoko." He didn't know why he had said that, but at that moment, it was the most reasonable thing his mind could come up with. And imagine his surprise when the girl immediately relaxed and glanced at him with those hopeful brown eyes of hers. Realizing that the method was somehow working, he immediately closed the gap between them and began to apply the salve to her bruised knees, ignoring the grunts of pain that escaped her lips. It was for her own good, and if she wasn't going to take care of herself, then he was going to do it for her, whether she liked it or not. "Why? Why?" "Because you are my friend, Kyoko." His instant reply caused her eyes to dilate. The comfortable silence enveloped the two as Naruto tenderly tended to Kyoko's bruised knees while she gazed at him with tears welling up in her large brown eyes. It was surreal and sad at the same time. It was a surreal experience because she could clearly see that Naruto's actions were free of any hidden malicious intentions. It was a pure and selfless display of care, something she had never expected for someone like her. However, there was also a touch of sorrow present in her heart as she knew deep down that this happiness was only temporary. Sooner or later, Shiro would inevitably reappear in her life. He and his friends were an incurable disease to her, one she had already resigned herself to. No matter how far she traveled on the path of friendship with Naruto, Shiro would find her and drag her back to the darkness-filled valley hidden in parallel. And I must take care of my friends, you know. A gentle hand was placed on her shoulder as he said it, causing warmth to blossom inside her body as she listened to his resolute words. They were otherworldly, almost believable too, had she not been aware of the sad reality around her. There was nothing Naruto could do for her in that situation, and if she had to be honest, she preferred it that way. Naruto was nothing compared to those monsters. Sure, he had a kind mother and a good personality. However, in the end, he was just another human being who would be crushed if he dared to defend her from those people. The unimaginable power held by those boys terrified her. She was terrified at the thought that if Naruto tried to defend her from them, he would be trapped in that agonizing nightmare with her, and maybe even his own mother. As desperate as she was to escape from her personal hell, she refused to knowingly put others in danger in her attempts to help herself. Why you should not worry about me that much, Naruto. We just became friends a while ago. Huh? What are you saying, Kyoko? It doesn't matter if our friendship is recent, friends are friends. Just because we recently became friends doesn't mean I won't worry about you, you idiot. To me, you're already like an old friend, and no matter what, I'll always be there for you. His powerful and impassioned statement left her momentarily speechless as she processed what she had just heard. Is this how friendship works? She couldn't help but ponder the authenticity of the statement, having been badly deceived in the past by a similar declaration. That boy made her the same promise as Naruto, with the only distinction being the varying levels of sincerity in their voices. While Naruto was doing his best to seem sincere, Shiro, on the other hand, never made an effort to appear sincere. For him, she was an innocent prey, someone he could easily deceive. She, a desperate and lonely girl, never hesitated and accepted his vile offer wholeheartedly. The aftermath of her foolish decision shattered her completely, making it increasingly difficult for her to trust anyone, particularly those who sought to approach her. However, she refused to let past experiences cloud her current judgment. She smiled delicately, lifted her hand, and slowly gestured towards his wrist. Here, take this. She handed him the ointment, her touch gentle as she guided his hand towards her knee. Now you can apply it as much as you want. Her voice was soft and almost inaudible, but she knew the boy heard her very well because in a blink of an eye, his hand was on her knee, providing a comforting touch that no one in the past had offered her. She knew it was useless. There was no way their friendship was going to last more than a week. It was bound to be severed, either by the truth of her past or the danger of her present. She was convinced that no boy would ever stay friends with her upon learning about her past. It was a harrowing ordeal, and she couldn't blame people for hating it and harshly judging her. The scars of the past were something that she herself hated to no end and wanted nothing more than to get rid of them. You should be careful, Kyoko. Her gaze drifted towards his face, and she blinked when she saw his genuine expression of worry. Although she wouldn't admit it, there was a certain comfort in witnessing that emotion on his face. These injuries can sometimes leave lifelong scars on your body, you know. And if that happens, then everyone will make fun of you because of them. Just like that, the happiness vanished from her face as he struck her with a harsh but undeniable truth. Hey, don't become sad again. I was just joking, Kyoko. He was, but everything he spoke was true for her. Why you were right, Naruto. People will hate me if I have scars, she murmured pathetically. Well, first of all, you are not going to get any scars, Kyoko. And even if you end up with some, then you should consider them as reminders of strength rather than sources of shame from stupid idiot. A surge of warmth and a strange emotion enveloped her tear-filled eyes as she witnessed him boldly utter those words, complemented by his radiant smile. I will never leave you alone, even if you get hundreds of scars on your body. Playground. Creak. 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 That was the sound of the swing on which Kyoko was sitting. It was terrible, a sound that she always associated with decay because it reminded her of the life she was leading. But today, something was different, very different. The sound was not coming across as intolerable today. Instead, it was sounding pleasantly similar to the harmonious chirping of the morning birds. How? Her heart couldn't help but wonder. In the past, she had played on numerous swings around town, but none of them had been able to improve her mood like the one she was sitting on today. So what was so different about it? You love swings. Her answer came in the form of a question from Naruto, who right now was standing behind her, gently pushing the swing back and forth. Naruto. Her eyes, so vacant before, suddenly became filled with an overwhelming rush of happiness and warmth as they slowly shifted to the young boy's face. It was undeniably captivating, and she couldn't help but berate herself for staring at him for so long. Yes. To avoid any further embarrassment, she decided to engage in the conversation, as it was far more important than the trivial thoughts that her mind was processing. Creak. She blinked when she was once again pushed high into the air by her friend. Then why don't you play with other children in the playground? If there had been someone else in his position, Kyoko would have instinctively buried her face between her knees. However, luckily, it was Naruto, a boy who had recently shown that he could be the kindest person if he wanted to. Children don't like playing with a girl like me, Naruto. After so many years, she was finally regaining her confidence, feeling it run through her veins. With each conversation, she found herself becoming less and less nervous in his presence. It was almost surreal how quickly it was happening. It had only been a matter of hours since she had met him, if she remembered correctly. Creak. What do you mean by a girl like you? Kyoko stiffened. A girl like me, how could she possibly reveal her life to him? It was a tragic tale, one she wanted to shield from everyone's eyes. The girl who hangs out with older boys, a bitter chuckle escaped from her mouth. Yet she couldn't and wouldn't hide her situation from him. If she wanted to be his true friend, then she was supposed to share everything about her life with him, no matter how good or bad, as long as they were true. She did not want to construct the castle of their friendship on the unstable grounds of lies and half-truths. BFF. Her hair whipped about chaotically in the gusts as she sharply glanced back towards Naruto mid-sentence. It shouldn't matter at all, Kyoko, as I don't know what kind of friendship you had with these boys. However, now that I'm here with you, I'm sure you won't need them anymore. Kyoko's heart leaped further than any swing could ever leap. I'll be your best friend. The best. But only on one condition. An ominous void threatened to engulf her heart once again as she listened to him silently. Condition. Was he planning to exploit her feelings of loneliness as well? She wasn't sure, and that's why she decided to confront him. Condition. She sounded vulnerable, so much that the boy behind her almost stopped nudging the swing. Yes. Regardless, he stood firm. What condition? Naruto clenched his small hands tightly around the rope of the swing, bringing it to an abrupt halt in the middle of its harmonious way. You must stop seeing those boys from now on. An uncomfortable silence fell upon the two as Kyoko tried to find some words in order to respond to him. I'm not sure what it is, Kyoko, but those boys emit such negative energy that I find extremely unpleasant. He chose to lie as deep down in his heart, he lacked the courage to speak the truth to her, especially when it came to unconventional matters. I don't want to be near them. The uncertainty and sadness in his voice were enough to put his friend on the edge, something that he noticed immediately when he saw Kyoko tense up slightly. I don't. Creak. Naruto smiled as she closed her mouth. I was just joking, he whispered, fully aware of the turmoil he had just put her through in the past few minutes. If you want to be friends with them, I have no problem. They're your best. Creak. The swing returned to its stationary position as Kyoko abruptly stood up from it and turned her face towards Naruto. I accept your condition. Huh? I said, I accept your condition, Naruto. I won't go near those boys ever again. The breeze picked up the pace around them. Creak. Naruto's small hands finally let go of the ropes that were supporting the swing. Thank you. He couldn't find the right words, but the reassurance that she wouldn't return to those vultures brought a sense of peace. A much-needed peace. Kyoko never imagined that she would ever be able to make friends. In her mind, she considered this belief to be completely absurd, as it was solely based on false information and lies that had been deeply planted in her mind to create a false sense of comfort. That's what she used to think, at least until she met him years ago. 5 years. Her eyes glowed with joy and love as she realized how quickly time had passed since their first meeting. It felt like just yesterday that she had met him at the park and shared everything about her life. She now had everything she had ever dreamed of. Friends, safety, happiness, and, most importantly, a family. The moment Naruto's mother heard her story, she opened her arms and welcomed her into their home. At one moment, she was recounting her life to Layla-san, and in the next, Layla-san was signing her adoption papers. She didn't know how, but the lady somehow managed to convince everyone to come to an agreement and change her entire life for the better. It still felt a little strange that her parents didn't even put up a fight in the courtroom. In the end, she hardly cared about them, just as they did for her. The feeling was mutual, if you ask her. But how did Layla-san manage to convince the police to arrest Shiro and his friends? For the umpteenth time ever since she had moved into her new home, Kyoko began to think about a possible explanation for the surprising development. No matter how she looked at it, it still seemed unbelievable that a seemingly ordinary-looking lady like Layla managed to accomplish so much without anyone's help. If Kyoko hadn't lived with her for so long, she might have suspected that the woman wielded some sort of mind-controlling sorcery. But that's not the case. She is simply an ordinary woman. She chuckled at her own foolishness. Seriously, it was time to put an end to diving into those books on magic spells from her aunt's room. Aunt. The smile blossomed on her lips as she recalled the day when Layla had practically insisted that she be called by that endearing title, and she, being the timid girl that she was, didn't oppose her request. But that doesn't mean that everything went smoothly afterward. Naruto had made it his life's goal to tease her as much as he could about it. She had become his stepsister, as he preferred to refer to her, but only in secret. At first, she didn't understand why he used to do that, especially when they were alone, but a quick and remorseful search on the internet cleared everything up. To say that she was appalled by what she discovered on the internet would be a severe understatement. She could still vividly recall the high fever she had when she met Naruto after the investigation. She couldn't even look at his face without blushing and feeling her legs turn jelly. Her lips curved into a triumphant smile as she remembered the shock on Naruto's face when he realized she had uncovered what he didn't want her to find. Alas, another innocent soul lost to the vile corruptions of this world. The poor boy thought that she would be angry and uncomfortable for teasing her like that, but Kyoko knew that she couldn't stay mad at him for long, no matter how hard she tried. He wasn't the kind of person you could stay mad at. He was the kind of person who needed to be cherished, loved, and protected at all costs. He was all she had, and getting mad at him was simply out of the question. Although she understood why he might think that way, considering her history with Shiro and his friends, Kyoko wasn't foolish. After living with those beasts for years, she was able to distinguish between harassment and playful banter. Shiro and his friends used to torment her, both mentally and physically, shamelessly. However, Naruto, unlike them, never dared to touch her without her permission. He is so good. There it was, that strange and exhilarating feeling that always stirs her heart whenever she thinks about Naruto. What is this? She wondered for a second before a sudden realization struck her. Do I like him? She shook her head, feeling that the word was not descriptive enough of her emotions. The word like could be used to express various feelings. She cherished her new life, her new aunt, her new school, and her new home. What she felt for Naruto couldn't be simply categorized as like. It was something deeper, something beyond mere liking, something akin to love. According to the books she had read in her school library, she was supposed to be feeling love. But is what I'm feeling really love? She asked, no one in particular, and buried her face into the pillow as a slow blush began to cover her. Her muffled scream reverberated through the room, but there was no one there to mock or taunt her for it. What are you thinking, Kyoko? Something was amiss with her, she could feel it deep within herself. After all, who in their right mind entertains thoughts like that about a friend? Naruto was meant to be her friend and protector, not someone she could envision building a future family with as her husband. But he is so nice. Her heart fluttered and skipped a beat when an image flashed before her brown eyes. It was of Naruto, smiling brightly at her as he gently combed her hair while they sat on her bed. Such moments had become a regular occurrence in her life. In her new home, she was treated like royalty, especially by her adoring aunt, who never missed a chance to shower her with affection. From taking care of her laundry to gently styling her hair, her aunt had taken it upon herself to fulfill her every need and wish. At first, she didn't understand why Layla was behaving that way. However, a single question to Naruto answered all her doubts and subsequently left her feeling immensely sad. Her aunt, Layla, was a dedicated family woman who wanted to have multiple children to shower with love. Unfortunately, her husband did not share the same enthusiasm. That foolish man abandoned her and Naruto when they needed him the most. Idiot. She murmured, sounding truly disappointed with the man. Who leaves a woman like Layla-san? She became more frustrated as she thought about how upset her aunt must have been when that man revealed his true nature. But nothing to worry about now. Naruto-kun and I will never let her be sad because of it. We will love her so much that she will forget she had any husband in the first place. We will be the happiest family in the world. In her pledge, Kyoko again ignored the fact that the relationship she and Layla shared with Naruto were not supposed to be crossed over. However, even if she had noticed, Kyoko wouldn't have cared. In her mind, if there was someone who deserved to be with Naruto more than herself, it was definitely her aunt. Only she had the right to be near Naruto excluding herself. Kyoko? The girl swiftly leaped from her bed and started searching for her clothes. Yes, auntie. She shouted. Dinner is ready. Humming. It's ramen and chicken. Come fast, Kyoko. Her hands froze midway through buttoning her shirt upon hearing his voice. Alright, Naruto-kun. A rush of crimson flushed her cheeks, the color of embarrassment boldly taking over her face. Dining room. Naruto was upset. No, the word upset couldn't even begin to express his feelings right now. He was pissed, very pissed. Why? Because his beloved and delicious food was getting colder and colder with each passing second. What is taking her so long? His eyes moved to the chair where his mother was sitting silently, waiting for her oh so darling Kyoko, while his fingers drummed impatiently on the dinner table. Hush, Naruto. I'm sure she is on her way to the table now. Just wait for a few more seconds. And please stop tapping the table. It's meant for dining, not for us to use as a musical instrument, you know. Naruto quickly stopped tapping the table at Layla's command. However, her words failed to bring about any noticeable change, as Naruto continued to groan and sigh in anguish and sorrow. His food was growing cold. How was he supposed to stay quiet? But still, he did not want to defy his beloved mother's order. Anger and hunger were important to him, but not as important as the lady sitting beside him. She was precious to him, and he would rather die than make her sad for no reason. He murmured. Oh, was Naruto sad? Layla's gentle hands reached out to his face and tenderly cradled his cheeks, an action she had been performing for years whenever he was feeling down. Today was no exception. Come, sit beside me, she whispered, her voice as soft as her hands. Okay. Layla smiled as Naruto gingerly rose to his feet and settled into the chair adjacent to hers. What happened, Naruto? She asked him. I'm very hungry, that's all. Her eyes sparkled with joy. I understand now. Delicate fingers reached up to his face and playfully flicked his nose. Silly Naruto. You should have mentioned that earlier. She smiled at him and removed the lid from the large bowl filled with hot steaming ramen. Picking up the chopsticks from her side, Layla dipped them in the bowl and gathered a handful of broth-covered noodles. Realizing the chopsticks could only handle that much, she placed the ramen in a small bowl in front of her son. Let mother feed you, my dear little Naruto. As soon as she brought the chopsticks in front of his face, Naruto began to devour the food as if it was the most delightful thing in the world. Slurp after slurp, he continued to swallow everything his mother offered him until her sudden laugh made him stop. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he gazed at her, pouting in disappointment. What? Why did you stop? I'm still famished, he complained, melodramatically patting his hollow stomach to emphasize his plea. In response, Layla only started to laugh even louder. Mom? Yes. She whispered between her laughs. Why are you laughing? Suppressing her laughter, Layla gave her son a sly smile. You've got a noodle hanging from your chin. The way she said it made it clear just how amusing the situation was to her. Slurping up noodles like a wild animal was one thing, but ending up with a makeshift goatee was just hilarious. There was no denying it. Naruto paused, his expression turning incredulous. With a slow movement, he angled his head slightly to catch his reflection in the mirror nestled in the corner of the room. A chuckle bubbled up from within him as he took in his appearance. I look just like a ramen sage. He exclaimed with glee, clearly delighted by the sight. Layla couldn't help but be engulfed by a beaming smile as she witnessed the sheer joy radiating from Naruto. His happiness was so infectious that she found herself unable to resist wrapping her arms around him from behind. Oh, you're just adorable. These tender exchanges had become increasingly rare as Naruto grew older, making him somewhat immune to her acts of love, particularly when others were present. It was both a joyful and heartbreaking process for her. On one hand, she witnessed him blossoming into a remarkable young man, like a true mother. On the other hand, it stirred anxiety within her, knowing that sooner or later he would begin to disregard her, as children his age often do. It wouldn't be long before he would stop thinking about her altogether. When that happens, what will she do? Layla had absolutely no idea. Both Naruto and Kyoko were growing up so fast that she couldn't help but feel a little worried on the inside. Just like Naruto, Kyoko was now part of her heart too. Kyoko was as precious to Layla as Naruto. She was certain that her heart would shatter when Kyoko would eventually find someone else and leave them forever. Being a single mother seems to have a lot of drawbacks. Her heart sank at the thought, but she refused to let it dampen her spirits. At this moment, she and her children were filled with happiness, and that was all that truly counted. Layla held Naruto closer, her grip tightening, as she smiled. Don't act like you don't want it, Naruto. I know you do. She whispered into his ears, mentally giggling when the boy tried to stutter and wiggle in her arms. I don't like it, Mom. Layla could easily discern lies in his voice. So, should I wear something more revealing, like a maid outfit? Would you like that, Naruto? She knew she had hit the bullseye when Naruto went limp and fell silent. What happened, Naruto? Did I say something wrong? Her laughs combined with his red face made a very funny spectacle, and if someone was to see them then. Auntie. The room fell into a heavy silence, and in a blink of an eye, Layla let go of Naruto, both of them clearly mortified, and turned around to face Kyoko who wore an equally flustered expression. Kyoko. The woman smiled at the girl to divert her attention from what she had just witnessed. Layla couldn't help but feel ashamed, realizing that she was truly an immoral mother. Why yes. The shame only increased when she heard Kyoko stutter a little. She knew it was because of her, but now there was nothing she could do to undo it. Erasing her memory was an option, but it was something she had vowed never to do to her family. I noticed that you've changed into your night clothes, dear. Once again, she attempted to change the subject and was pleasantly surprised when the girl nodded and smiled at her. Yes. Wonderful. Now come here so that we can start our lovely dinner. Kyoko paused in her walk. You haven't started yet? She asked her aunt. No. We were waiting for you. A warm sensation surged within Kyoko's heart. No matter how many times she heard those words from Layla's lips, they never lost their magic and always succeeded in bringing her joy. But why? Because her aunt's words constantly reminded her of the true meaning of having a family. They reassured her that she was wanted and provided her with a deep sense of comfort. I'm sorry for being late, Auntie. After changing my clothes, I realized they were a bit small, so I had to switch into the new ones you bought for me a few days ago. With her head bowed in apology, she was about to join them when a surprising comment from Naruto stopped her in her tracks. Geez, your breasts got bigger again, Kyo. I swear if they keep getting Kyoko was torn between blushing and getting angry at Naruto for his comment. Strangely, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride from Naruto's words. Strange indeed, however, those feelings diminished when she saw him being hit. It pained her heart to witness him getting hurt. Even though it was just a normal hit, one that wouldn't have much effect on him, she couldn't bear to see him in pain. It made her sad whenever she saw him like that. He was just joking, Auntie. Please don't punish him for it, she urged, trying to shield her friend from his mother's impending wrath. If you say so. The pain dissipated as she witnessed a radiant smile spread across Naruto's face, brilliant and childish at the same time. Thank you, she whispered, and then began to make her way around the table to sit beside Naruto. Soon, a comforting silence descended upon the entire family as they began to enjoy the tasty dinner that Layla had prepared. Having completed their meal, the family of three sat in silence around the table, awaiting someone to initiate a conversation. Realizing that no one was going to do it, Naruto decided to take matters into his own hands. Are you ready for your first day at the new school, Kyo? His blue eyes shifted over to the girl, who nodded eagerly, causing a smile to spread across his face. He didn't expect anything less from her. She was the most disciplined human being he had ever met, even rivaling the might of Smna at times. Yes. I have prepared everything I need for my first day there. Filled with enthusiasm, Naruto couldn't help but notice the absence of happiness in her voice. Are you alright? You seem a little down, Kyo. He wasted no time in addressing his observation, and it became even more apparent when she looked down at the table. Why aren't you changing schools with me, Naruto? I don't want to go to a school where you aren't going to sit beside me. Naruto let out a chuckle as he gently placed a hand on her head. Even if I try to, I can't, Kyoko. That school is exclusively for girls. Do I really look like a girl to you? No. But why are you making me change schools then? I can remain with you in our old school until Kuo Academy becomes co-ed. Deep in thought, Naruto began to ponder, at least that's the impression he wanted to give Kyoko. He was actually just looking for a way to occupy his time, as he didn't want to disclose the true motive behind her relocation. She doesn't need to know that. He cringed internally as a flood of images depicting people irritating or mocking Kyoko inundated his thoughts. Those images were one of the main motivations behind his actions. The current school situation was nothing short of hell for Kyoko. She was not loved there, and the possibility of Shiro and his friends being released soon only made her situation even more perilous. Shiro. A wave of dark emotion echoed through his mind at the mention of that boy and seeped into his eyes, causing them to momentarily radiate crimson. No matter what people thought about those boys, including his mother, to him, it was undeniable that they were among the worst scum of human society. Losers that never deserved to exist. No punishment in this world could ever absolve them from their disgusting deeds. That did not mean that Naruto had not tried to forgive them in the past, as his mother had advised him to do. He really did try, but a part of his mind refused to let go of the need for revenge against them and their nefarious crimes. It needed revenge more than anything else. No justice. His heart wanted justice for what those boys had done to those uncountable poor girls. Naruto was determined not to leave them alone until justice had been served. Not under any circumstances. They will suffer. As long as they live, they are going to suffer. I'll make sure of that. Naruto vowed to himself before mustering a bright smile on his face so that he could answer the question of his beloved Kyoko. I want you to make new friends, Kyoko. If you remain in our current school, it will be nearly impossible. You need a change, you know. His smile widened as a pout formed on his friend's beautiful face. HMPH. You're so stubborn, Naruto. Tell me something I don't know. And cute too. His cheeks bloomed with embarrassment. Hey. Hahaha. Whatever he had in his mind vanished when he heard his loud, melodious laughter. It was truly amazing and somehow calming as well. Realizing that he would only spoil the moment with his interruption, he made the decision to stay silent and simply bask in the charm of those laughs. Next morning. Backpack. Check. Pens. Check. Markers. Check. Lunchbox. Check. Notebooks. Check. Don't Emmy. Just answer. Oh okay, Captain. Anyway, sports uniform. Check. Am I forgetting something, Kyoko? Check. Naruto slumped to the ground in disappointment as soon as he heard her answer. Kyoko, it's not funny. Pay attention. He would have added something more had he not been abruptly silenced by his mother, who was quietly relishing the show from the sidelines. Also, she had a very playful smile on her face, a smile that indicated she would soon be teasing him a lot about it. Yes, Kyoko. Listen to the man of the household. Right, darling. Both teenagers blushed bashfully. The darling man of the house, you can't call him that, auntie. Layla smirked at the girl. Why? Because it suggests that he is your husband as you are the woman of the household. The thoughtful look that Layla adorned right after that statement of Kyoko made both the teens uneasy because they knew she was about to say something troubling. Something that would make them blush to the core. What's wrong with that? Naruto is going to be the head of the household in the future, right darling? And the teens weren't disappointed, well at least Naruto wasn't, however, Kyoko, on the other hand, was regarding her aunt with a curious gaze. Mom. Can't you remain silent for a second? I'm trying to help Kyoko here. Does that mean he is going to be both my stepbrother and daddy at the same time, auntie? The room was filled with an uncomfortable silence as they continued to lock eyes, desperately avoiding the question hanging in the air. Among the three, Naruto was the one who bore the greatest impact from the question. It was as if he was submerged in a sea of crimson, consumed by its relentless waves. His mother alone was sufficient to irritate him to no end, and now even Kyoko had begun to master the art of teasing. The future no longer appeared bright to him, instead, it was shrouded in nothing but red. Kyoko, let's start going through the list again. Please. The puzzled Kyoko simply nodded in response. Sure. She whispered, sounding utterly clueless about what she had just done. All she wanted was to understand the complex dynamics of her family. So where were we? Sports uniform. Naruto nodded firmly. Yes, I believe you've packed everything as I instructed. Now, the only thing left is a warning. Kyoko was surprised by the choice of words. Warning? What do you mean by that, Naruto-kun? Nothing, Kyoko. It's just a piece of advice that I want to give you. Oh. Watch out for this red-haired girl named Rias. I mean, don't hate her, hell even be her friend, but whenever she says that she is a devil, don't take her seriously. Kyoko blinked. Why would she do that? Because she is an otaku. She believes in a fantasy where she sees herself as a devil. Seriously? Yes. She's highly delusional and has a severe case of the 8th grade syndrome. So much so that she actually has mechanical wings that look like a bat on her back. So, whenever she comes to you and says she's a devil, just say that you believe her and smile at her, alright? Alright. But poor girl, she must be really lonely with those habits of hers. Not really, she has a bunch of friends who are like-minded. They formed an entire club to just prove that their delusions are real. Oh. Somewhere else, a group of high school students suddenly felt an overwhelming surge of frustration without any apparent cause. Ria's Gremory had witnessed countless things and events in her life, some remarkable, others utterly dreadful. However, never before had she encountered an individual as intriguing and enigmatic as the girl who had recently arrived at their school. As she observed her from a distance, hiding behind a pane of glass, she couldn't help but grimace upon recalling a crucial detail about the girl. She lives with Naruto. Her lips formed an adorable pout. So, she's the one, huh? His oh so dearly beloved sister. She mused, observing the girl's every step with intense focus. Honestly speaking, she was curious to discover what made the girl so extraordinary that Naruto had taken her in. I mean, she must have a powerful sacred gear or something. Otherwise, why would a lady as powerful as Layla let her join her family? Despite their reasonable tone, Rias chose to pay little heed to her thoughts, recognizing that there still existed a strong possibility of it being a genuine act of kindness, a trait highly renowned in both Naruto and his mother. Yes, master. She is that girl who is fucking the living daylights out of Naruto. Rias almost jumped away in surprise when Akeno, her beloved queen, appeared beside her and began to whisper in her ear. What? She stuttered, her face a little red due to the indecent words that had just assaulted her ears. Geez, Akeno. Can't you think about something else other than sex for a second? She is his sister. Her attempt to belittle her queen failed miserably as instead of being ashamed, Akeno began to laugh loudly and playfully poked her in the ribs to annoy her even more. I was joking, Rias. Riaz could easily tell that she wasn't, but instead of arguing with her about it, she chose to focus on the more significant things that were waiting for her on the other side of the window. She looks like a normal girl to me. Her eyes scanned every inch of the brown-haired girl's body one last time before settling on her face, where a radiant smile was blooming. Akeno followed her friend's gaze and smiled when she saw the girl standing alone at the entrance door. She has large breasts, just a little smaller than yours, Akeno said. She was completely focused on the girl and didn't even notice the disapproving glare from her friend, or maybe she chose to ignore it on purpose to avoid a heated argument. Also, she is ordinary, but that's according to our standards. I'm sure humans will find her beautiful. Akeno wasn't blind. She could see that the girl was stunningly beautiful, far more so than the average human girl, which would undoubtedly attract a great deal of attention, perhaps even too much for her liking. She had witnessed the insatiable nature of human desire, leaving no doubt that they would follow her as well. Maybe that's why Naruto likes her. No. What are you even thinking of, Akeno? She is his sister. Naruto wouldn't think of her like that. Her musings were abruptly interrupted when Riaz grabbed her hand. Confused, she gazed at her and noticed that she was pointing at something. Huh? A bemused expression crossed her face as she looked in the direction where her friend was pointing and had to hold back herself from smiling when she saw a nervous Naruto standing behind the wall of their school. Akeno could tell that he was there to see the girl from the look on his face, which made her smile even more. Oh, he's so cute. Just look at him, hiding behind a wall so that his sister can't see him. He really cares about her a lot. Her lips formed a beautiful curvature as he smiled at the girl. Riaz, who was staring at her queen with concern, gulped as she watched her devour the image of the boy with hungry eyes. Staring at him intensely will not make him suddenly appear in front of you, Akeno. You can stop looking at him now. Gosh, you do realize that you look no different from a creepy pervert, right? She tried to tell her, but Akeno didn't bother listening and continued to stare at the boy, who was still hiding behind the wall like a seasoned criminal. Fine, do whatever you want. She let out a soft sigh, her gaze shifting away from Akeno and settling on the boy in question. Cute as her eyes fell upon him, she couldn't help but wonder at how charming he appeared today. Maybe it's because of the worried expression he has on his face. She tried to convince herself, but deep inside she knew he had always appeared cute to her, at least since that day when he had complimented her in front of Suna during their chess match. Both of you are stupid horny teenagers. Riaz was once again taken aback when another member of her peerage suddenly appeared in the room. Kaneko without hesitation, she greeted the girl, who was staring at them with disdain, as though they were insignificant beings wasting valuable space on Earth. When did you come here? Weren't you supposed to be with Kiba at my house right now? She immediately bombarded her with a barrage of questions about their plans for the day to divert her attention from the fact that she along with her best friend were shamelessly ogling Naruto a while ago. From Kaneko's expression, it was evident that she had no intention of letting the matter go unnoticed. First, I want to know why both of you were staring at Naruto-senpai like that, she said, her lips forming an almost imperceptible smirk as her leader began spouting nonsense. It was cute, but she kept that to herself. But you. I didn't know you had a crush on Naruto too. Akeno's teasing laughs only worsened the situation for Riaz as the poor girl hid her face behind her hands, hoping for the embarrassment to pass. It was amusing to observe how, despite being a stunning and confident young woman, her friend would suddenly transform into a shy and reclusive individual whenever the subject of Naruto was brought up. Then again, she wasn't that good either when it came to Naruto. Ah, the beauty of teenage crush. The Himejima girl giggled again, this time to herself as she began to daydream about a romantic future with a blonde boy. I want to live beside a beach where I can always wear a bikini and fuck him whenever I want to. Another set of mischievous giggles escaped from her lips, but before she could dive further into her fantasies, her best friend pulled her back to reality. I don't have a crush on him, Akeno. I'm just his friend, Riaz said, her face showing a sliver of annoyance as she tried to reason with her queen, who was glaring at her for interrupting her dreams. Yes, just his friend. She wasn't lying. As far back as she could remember, she had always longed to be his friend, nothing more and nothing less. At least, that was the case for now. However, she couldn't make the same claim about the future, as it could be quite unpredictable at times. The Keno's smirk disappeared from her lips when she saw the sincerity in Ria's expression. She's not lying, she thought. This revelation brought both relief and a tinge of sadness. Relief, because it meant there would be less competition for Naruto, but sadness, as it also meant losing the thrill of the chase. What was the purpose of being with Naruto if Riaz wouldn't be there alongside them? Riaz was her closest friend, and Akeno wanted to experience everything together with her. I see her voice trailed off into a hushed murmur before resuming its customary playful tone. That girl has a sacred gear, a very strong one if I'm correct. In just a few words, Kaneko managed to completely shift the atmosphere of the room. Her leader, who had been in the midst of a heated argument with the queen, fell silent the moment Kaneko spoke. Now, she had their undivided attention. "Really?" Riaz exclaimed, barely able to conceal her surprise at the newly acquired information from Kaneko. If what Kaneko was saying was true, then she finally had a chance against that monster. A small smile spread across Ria's lips. "Then we must recruit her to our team." That was her initial thought, but it vanished instantly when she realized the implications of her words. Naruto, he was not going to like that, not at all. He and his mother were staunch opposers of the evil pieces, and she was certain they would kill her if they found out about her efforts to recruit their family member into her peerage. He will not like that. You know of Naruto's opinions on the evil piece system and having a peerage system. It seemed that her queen was also having the same thoughts. "I know," Riaz whispered, feeling a tinge of disappointment at her own foolishness. There was no way she could recruit that girl to her team with Naruto shadowing her every move. He is very serious about her safety. Peering out the window again, she noticed that the boy was still standing there, perhaps waiting for the girl to make her way into the school's hallway. Yes. Akeno soon joined her master and began to stare at the boy. She is his sister, after all. Although she didn't know much about Naruto's personal life, she still knew enough to understand that the boy loved his family dearly. Creak. Both the girls turned at the sound of the door, only to notice that Kaneko had left the room. She probably went home to meet her Kiba-senpai. Forgetting about the subject of the sacred gear for a moment, Akeno giggled to herself as she remembered how much Kaneko admired our junior blondie. If Akeno didn't know any better, she would have assumed that Kaneko was already falling for the boy. But she will, her lips curved upwards, forming a haughty smirk, a reaction that clashed with Ria's silent observation from her side. "Seriously, Akeno. You are hopeless." The red-haired princess groaned in displeasure. Here, she was contemplating a strategy to recruit that girl onto her team, while her queen, who should have been assisting her in her mission, was distracted by some stupid inappropriate daydream in her mind. "Oh, don't be sad, Riaz. I'm sure you will find someone just like our little Kaneko did." Ria's eyes twitched at the obvious jab aimed at her love life, but decided to remain silent, knowing that any comment would only escalate the situation. "I'm sure I will, but right now, I need to find a way to get that girl in our team before Smna tries something." It was only an accident that she remembered about her friend Smna while thinking about the girl, but now that she did, she couldn't help but fear her. The cunning devil was undoubtedly planning to make a move on the girl. How did she know? Because unlike me, Smna knows Naruto very well and will be able to convince and calm him down if the situation turns sour. It was a sobering realization, but it was the truth. Smna was a dear friend of Naruto, and Riaz was well aware of that. "Are you sure you want to proceed with this despite knowing what Naruto will think of it?" Akeno's face betrayed a mix of emotions. She was acutely aware that the plan would inevitably strain their relationship with Naruto. Moving forward with the plan felt akin to a blatant betrayal of his trust. Riaz bit her lip at the question posed by her longtime companion. Nevertheless, she was determined, we are left with no alternative. Akeno's expression turned serious upon hearing Ria's response. "No, we do have a choice. We could simply release her and ensure this matter is never mentioned again." Ria sighed. She acknowledged that her plan wasn't the most glamorous, but it was essential. "We need all the help we can. Letting her go is not an option and you know it. We'll just need to apologize to Naruto later on." Knowing him, he would probably accept the apology. Akeno looked at her friend with a conflicted look on her face. Disappointment filled her being at her very core, and all of it was directed towards Riaz. "That would only make you look like a hypocrite." Riaz glared at her friend and said, "Do you think I don't know that? I understand that bringing her in wouldn't guarantee my victory, but it would certainly improve my chances. I would rather be called a hypocrite than be Riser Phenex's prize doll." Akeno finally became serious as she realized the significance of the situation for her friend. Riaz was determined to defeat that boy Riser, and for that, she needed a truly powerful ally. Smna will probably try to befriend her first before making a move on her. If we are to bring her in, then we need to be the ones that do so before her. Riaz scoffed at Akeno's statement. "It's not that easy, Akeno." "I know, but I'm sure we will be able to do it." "How are you so sure about that?" "I don't know." Oof. Outside the school. Nice. Naruto smiled to himself as he saw Kyoko disappear into the shadows of the hallways. Initially, he had some concerns about her, as she had never been anywhere without him by her side. However, upon seeing her enter the school with a radiant smile adorning her face, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmingly satisfied with himself. Now, all he had to do was wait for her until school was over to pick her up and head back home together. "It will be easy, I just have to wait here for a few hours," he whispered, a smile playing on his lips as he reflected on the successful job he had done in preparing her for her first day. It had been a painstaking task, but the satisfaction he felt was worth it. I hope she can make a lot of friends here. His happy thoughts came to an abrupt halt when a melodious voice brought him out of his stupor. Excuse me. Naruto didn't waste a moment before turning around. Yes, he began, but his words disappeared as his eyes landed on the face of the stranger, hidden behind beautiful white locks. The sight was so stunning that for a few seconds, he was completely oblivious to everything else around him. A few hours later. Naruto was right. He wasn't making stuff up when he said that the school was filled with interesting and dumb people at the same time. On one hand, there were people like Sona and Tsubaki, who could rival any genius of their age without breaking a sweat, and on the other hand, the school was filled with countless perverts in the form of junior girls who wanted nothing but a glimpse of their seniors' assets. Why did he send me here? I was happy with him in our old school. Her heart sank as she observed her classmates engage in heated debates about the attractiveness and appeal of the girls from their school, particularly of two individuals whose names struck a chord. Rias and Akeno. According to the information she had gathered from her classmates, they were a year ahead of her in academics, a fact that brought her immense joy when she first received confirmation from her class representative. At least I'm safe from them this way. Kyoko was not one to be rude or ignore others, but the situation with those two girls was exceptional. According to Naruto, they were both ignorant and arrogant. She is so delusional that she formed a whole cult around the concept of her being a descendant of devils. Even her friends fell for their stupid intuitions. A shudder ran up the spine of Kyoko as a horrifying image began to form inside her mind, an image in which Akeno was involved in a sinister occult ritual alongside Rias and her friends. I need to stay away from them because I don't think I'll be able to handle another group filled with odd people. She whispered to herself and turned her head towards her classmates again. PSS. Kyoko's ears perked up as a strange sound echoed down the corridor. The distinct tone made it clear that it was a senior student approaching, even before she glanced in their direction. PST. No, it's too senior, she thought, as another wave of soothing sound filled her ears. What could they want? Letting out a soft sigh, she glanced to her right and noticed two familiar faces standing there. Why you, who are you? She gulped loudly, trying her best not to disturb the class in the process. When Kyoko saw the first girl, with the most breathtakingly beautiful face she had ever laid eyes on, smile at her, she momentarily froze in place. However, she quickly regained her composure before anyone could detect her momentary lapse. My name is Rias Gremory, Kyoko-san. Kyoko couldn't help but tremble in her seat as soon as the girl spoke her name. Rias, there she was, the one and only Rias Gremory, a girl she was determined to avoid at all costs. Luck is not on my side today. She thought to herself, frustration bubbling up as the only person she wanted to avoid suddenly appeared in front of her, as if by magic. To avoid the impending conversation, Kyoko turned toward her classmates once again, only to gasp when she noticed that the entire class was staring at her with wide eyes. What have I got myself into? She could only think in dismay because the glares her classmates were passing on to her were cold and cruel. It was as if they were killing her with their eyes. Your classmates love you. Kyoko blinked in surprise when the other girl, one with stunning ebony locks and a figure that could rival her aunt's, finally made herself known as she scooted a little closer to her. With every inch she closed the distance between them, the anxiety in Kyoko's mind intensified. I don't think so, Akeno-senpai. Her eyes widened with confusion as the black-haired senior flashed a smile. You know my name already? Oh, I didn't know I'm this famous. Naruto informed me about you, Kyoko answered immediately and had to suppress her surprise as the girl started giggling in an uncharacteristic manner. Naruto? Kyoko nodded her head in positive. Yes. He talks a lot about you and Rias-senpai. Before she could even add anything more to her answer, the red-haired beauty jumped into the conversation out of nowhere and coughed at her, effectively diverting the attention to her. Naruto, what does he say about us? For the first time in her life, Kyoko was left with no option but to lie. The girls' expressions were brimming with curiosity and innocence. It was clear that they had a tremendous amount of admiration for Naruto, and she didn't want to upset them by revealing the truth. She struggled to speak, a heavy silence hanging in the air as she gathered her thoughts. After a few deep breaths, she tried once more to find her voice. He talks a lot about your hair, Rias-senpai. Rias, who had been standing idle until now, stumbled under the weight of the unexpected compliment. My hair. She stammered, her surprise evident in her voice as there was no reason for Naruto to talk about her and her hair. He would never compliment me unless he has a fetish for girls with red hair. She shut down the rabbit hole of her thoughts, fearing where they might lead. Yes. He really likes them. That was the final straw for Rias. Before anyone could say anything else, her face turned scarlet, nearly matching the color of her beautiful hair. I see, she stammered. Despite her calm exterior, inside, it was a completely different situation. What about me? What does Naruto say about me? Akeno whispered with a hint of desperation, breaking the awkward silence and making both the girls look at her in anticipation of compliments. Kyoko paused, a slight smile playing on her lips as she looked at the black-haired girl. Why? Well, unlike Ria's, Naruto had genuinely complimented Akeno during their conversation before her first day of school. He had called her the most beautiful girl in the whole school. The smile on her face got bigger when Akeno looked away from her. She is so innocent, unaware of the lurking devil hidden behind Akeno's beautiful face. Kyoko couldn't help but smile at her for her extreme shyness. She is so much like me, she thought, still unaware of how wrong she was. Riaz, who was watching the whole scene from the sidelines, frowned slightly at her friend's behavior in front of the girl. They were there to lure her in, not to be lured by her charm and innocence. Ahem, she cleared her throat lightly and was pleased when both the girls looked at her immediately. Akeno, aren't you forgetting something? She asked her queen, only to sulk in annoyance shortly when she began to look at her like a lost puppy. Friendship, she uttered softly, feeling a sense of calm wash over her as she observed an expression of understanding gradually appear on Akeno's face. Ah yes, Akeno gasped and then laughed at herself for forgetting such an important part of their plan. She seriously needed to have more self-control. She couldn't be acting like a fool whenever that boy's name was mentioned. Kyoko-san, did you make any friends today? She turned towards the girl and asked her. No. Ah. Kyoko had encountered many dangerous stares in her life, but the looks Riaz and Akeno were giving her were truly otherworldly. They were looking at her like as if she was a prize to be obtained at any cost. Like they were the predators and she was their next meal. In short, she didn't like the way they were looking at her. Now she understood what Naruto had been talking about. These two are truly strange. You can be our friends then. It finally happened. What Naruto told her was absolutely right. He was a brilliant fortune teller. She needed to reward him, but first, she needed to save herself. I don't. Unfortunately, Kyoko had no choice as Akeno practically began to drag her to an unknown location. Naruto. Club room. Naruto was absolutely right. Kyoko found herself repeating the sentence quite frequently. However, it didn't change the fact that he was tough. These girls were trouble personified. No, they were worse than that. They were delusional cultists, completely detached from reality and trapped in an illusionary world where they believed in the existence of a being named Satan. Riaz-senpai, where are we? Kyoko couldn't resist asking the girl, who had a wide grin on her face. If she wasn't mistaken, it seemed as though the girl was staring at her with great intensity, as if she had the power to devour her whole at any given moment. This unaware of the inner turmoil engulfing her junior's mind, Riaz pointed towards her room and puffed her chest out in pride. Is our small little cabin where we conduct research on supernatural phenomena such as ghosts and devils. Every word Riaz spoke filled Kyoko with growing unease. There was something amiss about these two, she could sense it deep within. They were far from normal, without a doubt. I see. But aren't devils and ghosts just a myth? I mean, no one has ever seen them. Nonetheless, she tried to argue with her, hoping to bring them back to normality, but all her attempts were in vain when the two of them began to laugh at her, hysteria resonating in their giggles. Oh dear Kyoko, you are so naive and cute. It was Akeno who spoke this time. Naive Kyoko's face faltered slightly at the ironic jab. You, Akeno-senpai, are the one deluded by your own naivety. A surge of anger urged her to retort loudly to the girl's accusation, but a rational side prevailed, preventing her from giving in to the temptation. Arguing with people like them was futile. They had already sunk deep into the abyss of what was known as the 8th grade syndrome, and there was no way to retrieve them. She could only apologize to them for the damage that others had inflicted on their minds. The relentless craving for attention and validation must have messed up their thought processes. Otherwise, there would be no justification for their decision to pursue such a foolish path. With a heavy-hearted expression, she stole a glance at the girls and then closed her eyes. I'm sorry, Riaz and Akeno-senpai. There is nothing I can do to save you two now. You both have already traversed way beyond the boundaries of salvation. A tear trickled down her cheek as she uttered those words, brimming with great sorrow and remorse. It was an unjust fate that these two had to endure. The society let them down when they needed it the most. Riaz was the first to recover from the shock and decided to express her confusion to the girl. What is she talking about? Her mind raced to deduce what was going on inside the head of the girl sitting in front of her, who was behaving rather strangely. I said I'm sorry, Riaz-senpai. We the people of this society have clearly failed to save you both. We drove you both to the state of insanity that you are currently in. Tension and confusion filled the room as all three girls exchanged looks, one bearing the weight of remorse and regret, while the other two struggled with confusion and shock. Hey Kyoko, what are you talking about, sweetie? Akeno quickly joined her friend in the quest to understand the reason behind Kyoko's strange behavior, finding it both unsettling and remarkable. Her shock only intensified when Kyoko bowed her head and started silently sobbing. I know what you two are going through. I have been there, Akeno-senpai. It's lonely and suffocating there, isn't it? Wiping the tears off her face, Kyoko looked at her seniors and gave them a reassuring smile. The constant hunger for attention and futile attempts to be unique so that someone would acknowledge you is horrible, isn't it? I know it because I used to do the same too. She whispered, reminiscing about the days when loneliness and silence were her sole companions. Kyoko, you're scaring us. Please tell me, what's going on? Riaz asked, her voice filled with concern, only to gasp in surprise when she answered her question. Scaring you? It's you two who are scaring me, Riaz-senpai. Riaz looked like someone had just punched her in the gut and she couldn't catch her breath. Us? What have we done? Her mind began to search for the potential reasons behind that explanation, but it found none. They had done nothing that could or should scare the girl. In fact, they had been very kind and helpful towards her the whole time. You believe in devils and ghosts, Riaz-senpai. Both the devils were dumbfounded after hearing the statement. It was entirely unexpected, catching their feeble and unprepared minds off guard. How could a girl, who had been living with two dangerous and powerful devils, possibly remain oblivious to their very existence? It was absolutely preposterous. It was unbelievable. For a moment, they thought Kyoko was joking, but a single glance at her face revealed the truth. You don't know that devils exist? Riaz whispered the question so softly that she was certain no one had caught it. The impact of what she had just heard still reverberated through her, leaving her in a state of shock. How would I? They aren't real. Kyoko's simple answer accomplished what no one had ever achieved with Riaz before. It ignited a blazing fire of admiration for another person, that person being the ultimate devil, Naruto. He had surpassed them all, leaving no room for competition now. When Riaz was young and full of innocence, she used to believe that Naruto would never be capable of becoming a respectable devil due to his half-human nature and the absence of a devil's mindset. However, time and time again, the blonde has proven her wrong, thereby shattering her preconceptions. This time, he completely shattered the image she had of him. His sharp intellect and charming voice were unmatched in comparison to the younger generation. Not even Sma could compete with him. After all, who among them could fool a girl like that? No one. Kyoko, they are real. Riaz looked at her friend and let out a sigh. She wanted to intervene and tell her that there was no way for Kyoko to believe them now. We are. I know. You two are devils and have bat wings. Wings. Everything vanished from Ria's mind as soon as she heard that word. I'm so stupid. Here she had the definitive response to Kyoko's argument and she was worrying about nothing. Exactly, Kyoko. We have wings. The people you are living with have them too. Really? Riaz and Akeno shared a smug smile, reveling in the knowledge that they were about to destroy this girl's entire career. Their excitement was palpable because they knew that by doing so, they were going to ruin Naruto's prank too. Flicker. Emerging amidst a breathtaking blend of crimson and pearl white lightning, a set of obsidian wings unfurled from their shoulder blades. Now just as Riaz opened her mouth to speak, she was silenced by Kyoko's abrupt hug. I feel for you, Riaz-senpai. But I'm sorry, I can't see you suffer like this. To think that you would actually go as far as to install mechanical bat wings on your back to prove your point. Mechanical. The bat wings. Riaz and Akeno were astounded by what they were hearing, finishing each other's sentences in unison. Soon, their eyes widened in shock and astonishment. Riaz wanted to correct her. Wait, but she wasn't given the opportunity as Kyoko continued her speech. How much money did it cost you to even make it? No, that doesn't matter anymore. Don't worry, senpai. I am confident that both of you will eventually come to realize the truth and I will be by your side, supporting you every step of the way. But right now, I need some time to process what I've seen, so please excuse me. With that, Kyoko withdrew her hands from Ria's back and began to walk towards the exit. Wait. Creak. The room fell into an eerie stillness once more. Akeno. Shhh, don't disturb, Riaz, and just let me contemplate my existence, thank you. Naruto knew that Kyoko was innocent, in fact, she was probably one of the most innocent humans on Earth. However, he didn't expect her to comply with everything he told her to do on the first day of school. You actually said that to her? He asked again, just to confirm. It still seemed impossible to him. There was no way Kyoko could have said all those things to those two girls. Why yes. Did I do something wrong, Naruto? Her weary and uncertain tone caught him off guard. No. He quickly interrupted her, preventing her from diving further into the subject and gently placed a hand on her head, patting it. Then why are you asking me about it again and again? Her flustered face and shy eyes made Naruto grin even wider. If there was one thing he treasured above all in this world, it was Kyoko's innocence. Maybe it was because of his own troubled past, or maybe it was because she was a beloved family member. Whatever the reason, he adored it. He wanted to protect her from the vigilant eyes of the supernatural realm, doing everything within his ability to protect her innocence. It's just that I was having a hard time believing that you actually said those words to Riaz and Akeno, you know. Usually, you're so shy and reserved around strangers, so for you to confidently say those things to their face felt surprising. He paused when he saw Kyoko blush slightly, clearly embarrassed. But hey. I'm proud that you did it. It means you are opening yourself to others, Kyoko, and that fact alone is enough to make me happy. So don't shy away from me because of it. In answer, Kyoko nodded her head gently and smiled at him. It was always wonderful to be complimented by someone you admired, and receiving head pats from that person was just the icing on the cake. Thank you. She whispered, her voice still as low as a whisper. Ignoring Kyoko's adorable expression, Naruto then asked the burning question that had been consuming him from within. What were their reactions? I mean, how did they react to your words? His joyful voice and the excited look on his face didn't go unnoticed by Kyoko, but she decided to take it as genuine enthusiasm and interest in her progress. They just froze and went silent. A devious smile on Naruto's face grew broader. Really? He asked her, barely holding back his laughter as Kyoko nodded in confirmation. I see. It must have been quite a sight, he mumbled to himself. What? Nothing, Kyoko. Naruto waved his right hand at the girl and pinched her cheek with the other. Oh, look at your face. You look so cute when it's all red. I don't. You. Abruptly, the room fell into silence as the clear sound of the doorbell reverberated throughout the house. Ooh. Devil. She was meant to be a being who sustained herself by indulging in acts considered sinful by others. The society around her expected her to have all the traits of a devil. From being selfish to using others when they were at their lowest mentally were how everyone around her wanted her to be. Unfortunately, she lacked all of those traits. She was neither selfish nor capable of taking advantage of someone when they were at their lowest. To her, everything people told her to do felt immoral, and at times, even the people themselves appeared immoral, like adversaries. What was wrong with her? It was a question that everyone used to ask her, and she couldn't blame them. After all, being a devil was supposed to be her entire identity, and yet she couldn't even fully explore it. To all those around her, she appeared to be a failure, an even greater disgrace considering her prestigious lineage. Her family was a prominent name in the underworld, and thus her inability to succeed was considered a shocking disgrace in their books. They despised people like her, viewing them as nothing more than failures and blemishes on their legacy. They would rather eliminate failures immediately and erase the stain of their existence than accept them as a part of their family. Sadly for her, she couldn't even be killed because of her position in that abhorrent family. She was the daughter of the head, and that precisely meant she was no commoner among her fellow family members. The rules that were meant for the lower levels of her family didn't apply to her. She was immune to them, which meant she couldn't be subjected to the punishments designated for the lower members of her family. But that didn't mean I wasn't punished. She was punished heavily. The punishments she received were so cruel that every time they began, all she could hope for was a sweet and complete release. But that never happened, her wishes always remained unfulfilled. With tears streaming down her face and pain gnawing at her core, she bravely endured every punishment that was inflicted upon her. What other options were there for her? She had no one by her side, aside from her weak and innocent mother who could not even utter a word against her father. Everyone around her despised her presence, and she was well aware of that. Pain and sadness became the harsh reality of her life, a bitter truth she eventually came to accept long ago. Just as some were born to change the world for better or for worse, she believed she was born to endure suffering, an unchangeable fate she had come to terms with. At least it was what she used to think until she met him. The boy with the widest smile and the brightest blonde hair in the world. She whispered to herself. A small smile graced her plump lips as she began to think about the boy in question. You are truly an extraordinary person, the smile broadened as the image of the beautiful boy flashed before her eyes. Even though I only met you a little while ago, I can't wait to meet you again. The thirst in her voice finally began to reveal itself. I will fight. Every word inside her mouth vanished as her head collided with something solid, causing her to squint in pain. Ah, what just happened? She muttered to herself, then looked ahead and was greeted by a stunning door made of exquisite, expensive wood. Is this his house? She wondered, only to groan in frustration moments later as she realized she had been standing in front of it for an entire hour. Of course, it's his house, she stated confidently. She couldn't be mistaken, she had been watching him from the shadows for years. There was no possibility of confusing his house with anyone else's. Okay then, it's time for me to reintroduce myself to him. With that resolute thought in her mind, she raised her hand and firmly pressed the doorbell. Ding. The sound of the bell sent shivers down her spine, as it meant that soon someone was going to walk through the door. What if it's him? Her eyes widened as she slowly backed away from the door. I must. Her heart skipped a beat as her ears caught the sound of footsteps echoing beyond the door. It was definitely him, she was absolutely sure. How did she know? Because she was very familiar with his walking pattern. There was simply no way she could be mistaken about it. Who could be visiting us at this time? Her face went pale, and her heart began to beat frantically as soon as she heard his voice. It's him, she whispered as her feet started moving in the opposite direction of her original approach. She couldn't face him without embarrassing herself all over again. She had to get away from there as soon as possible. Click. But before she could do anything, the door of the house swung open, emitting a distinct clanging of metal. Hello? Her eyes widened in sheer disbelief as his face came into view. And Naruto trembling under the weight of her overwhelming emotions, she attempted to take a step back but clumsily lost balance, her feet becoming entangled. In an instant, she found herself hurtling towards the ground, helpless and unable to prevent her fall. Hey! Only after Naruto shouted at her did Sarah realize that she was falling. Ha! She gasped as she tried to change direction to minimize the damage to her already injured hand. An uncomfortable groan escaped her plump lips as she fell directly on her back. My. Hey. Are you okay? All her thoughts left her mind the moment his familiar face resurfaced before her. Yes. Smiling to herself, she replied to the boy. You fell. Naruto paused when he noticed something unusual about the individual. I have seen her before, but where? He thought as he was confident he had seen her face somewhere before. So, rummaging through the countless memories in his brain, he began to search for the one particular memory that was connected to her. Ah. Within a matter of a few seconds, he remembered where he had seen her before. You're that girl who fainted in front of the school. Naruto's words elicited a surprised reaction from Sarah. Her beautiful pale face, once adorned with nothing but white, was soon tinged with the shameful color of red. She tried to reply, but unfortunately, there was nothing she could say in response to what Naruto had just said, for it was undeniably true. She did faint as soon as she saw him in front of the school. But it wasn't because I was embarrassed. It's just that I didn't expect him to be there. She pitifully thought. Hello? Are you still there or did you faint again? Sarah suppressed a groan in response to the obvious teasing. Normally, she would have retaliated by unleashing her fury on anyone else, but Naruto was different. He was the exception to everything in her world. He could call her whatever he wanted and she wouldn't mind, as long as it was just teasing. I'm fine. Noticing the growing concern in his eyes, she mustered a faint smile of sincere gratitude towards him. I'm fine. Here. All of her senses flared up at once as he held out his hand. I said I'm fine still, her ego resisted accepting his help, fearing it would label her as a weak individual in his eyes, who could not even get up from the ground on her own. I know, but didn't you hurt your right hand last time we met? It's fine to take help from others from time to time, you know. After all, that's what makes us human. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. How did she know that quote? As far as he could remember, he had never heard anyone else say it. For all he knew, he could have been the one to come up with that quote in the first place. So, hearing it from someone else threw him off a little. Maybe it's not an original quote after all. Sighing to himself, he looked at the girl once more, only to find her staring at him as if he were some kind of unearthly being. Hello? He blinked when the girl didn't answer. Hello? Hello? Excuse me? As Naruto struggled to find a way to bring Sarah back to reality, Sarah, on the other hand, was experiencing the time of her life, gazing into the eyes of the person she had admired so deeply over the past few years. You look cool though, even more than me. Her heart fluttered with uncountable emotions as she began to fall into the chasm of one of the few sets of beautiful memories amassed throughout her tragic and unfortunate life, memories gifted by him like delicate petals in a vast garden. Flashback. Pain. It was all she could feel. From the brilliant beginning of the day to the gloomy end, she was met with nothing but pain and suffering. Her body, her frail and exhausted body, had endured unimaginable abuse for years and was finally giving up. She could feel it in her heart as hope was beginning to slip away. Hope. The false belief bestowed upon her by her mother was something that had given her the courage to endure everything that had been thrown at her by her wicked family. But now, after being crushed by the harsh reality so many times, Sarah was beginning to realize that hope was nothing but an illusion. It was just a mental crutch created by weak individuals to help them endure the punishments that were inflicted on them by strong entities. She, who had lived her entire life embracing the concept of hope, was gradually starting to recognize that the more she clung to this notion, the more her strength diminished. I can't go on living like this, Sarah lamented to herself, her face contorting into a deep scowl as she sought refuge under the soothing shade of the towering tree. If I want to live a fulfilling life, I must become strong. Her gaze, previously fixed on the sky, shifted away from the expanse of blue and focused on the tree above her. In both the supernatural world and the mortal one, only powerful things can survive the punishment of time. The tree under which she was sitting was a powerful being. It had endured every punishment inflicted on it by nature, and now, after overcoming those hardships, it was offering shelter for vulnerable individuals, providing them with a cover from the scorching heat and pouring rain. According to Sarah, the tree was one of the best examples of how a strong being should act. First you must become stronger, and then you can use that power to improve the lives of those who are weaker than you, she whispered, reflecting on her mother's profound advice with unwavering clarity. But how am I supposed to become powerful? She had nobody to teach her or lend a helping hand in any capacity whatsoever. The only person by her side was her beloved mother, but as much as Sarah hated to admit it, her mother was not powerful enough. In the end, she was just a human. This fact made her inherently weaker compared to almost every other being in her world. You are weak and pathetic because you lack the traits to be a true devil. Sarah clenched her fists as her father's harsh, yet undeniably accurate, words echoed in her mind. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, she could not avoid the undeniable truth. Her father was correct. The main reason for her weakness was her not accepting the true essence of her existence. She was more devil than human, but Sarah had always refused to accept that reality throughout her life. Why? Because it doesn't align with my ideology. Her ideology was to help weaker beings and protect them, something that stood in stark contrast to the values of the devils. They exploit vulnerable individuals only to discard them once they no longer serve a purpose. Sarah could never stoop to such levels. She refused to tread down that dark path. How am I supposed to fight that monster? Her eyes widened in surprise as she heard the sound of footsteps approaching her. Have they found this place already? The fear in her voice was warranted, as if her father caught her taking a break here, instead of observing other devil children in the town, he would permanently ban her from visiting the human world. All her worries vanished in an instant when, instead of her father, she caught sight of an unfamiliar figure emerging into the clearing. This place seems nice. I think I can train here. Her beautiful hazel eyes met his deep blue, and at that very moment, she noticed something strange about him. He isn't a human. She could sense it in an instant as he was leaking out energy as if it was nothing. His energy reserves are huge. In her short and sad life, she had seen many individuals with almost endless reserves of energy, but none of them could even compete with the vibrant display before her at that moment. You don't have to hide anymore. I can sense energy too, you know. His words elicited a gasp out of her, and before she knew what she was doing, she was walking out of her hiding spot. What am I doing? He can be a rogue devil or a Lucifer hater in general. She let the flood of scenarios run through her mind, but she dismissed them all without much thought. If what she was looking at was true, then the boy could have already killed her by now. Huh? Naruto blinked as the bushes behind him rustled abruptly. Is he behind me? He panicked. Smart and aware as he might appear on the outside, Naruto was still a novice when it came to sensing the presence of another supernatural individual. So yeah, while he could sense that someone was hiding near him, he could still not point out where. The fear in his heart subsided a little as he was greeted by the sweet and timid voice of a girl. Who is she? He asked himself and turned around to look at the person, only to be amazed when he saw one of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen standing in front of him. I'm sorry for scaring you like that, but believe me, I wasn't trying to hide from you. She could have said anything at that moment, and Naruto still wouldn't have cared much because he wasn't listening to her words at all. For him, her hair was the center of his attention, and all he could do was stare at it like a fool. Beautiful, he muttered to himself. In his entire life, he had never seen hair as beautiful as hers. Hello? With each step she took, her hair floated around her, adding an extra touch of grace to her already beautiful face. Hello? Naruto finally snapped out of his stupor and looked at the girl's face, only to recoil back in shame when he noticed the fear in her eyes. I must have scared her by my creepy staring. The shame inside him doubled when he realized how stupid he must have looked when he was staring at her like that. Are you there? Eyes still down in shame, Naruto responded to her with a simple nod of his head. Okay. I said I wasn't trying to hide from you. I was just resting here for a while. Once again, Naruto simply nodded in response, further confusing Sarah with his actions. Are you alright? Why aren't you looking at me like before? She asked, unaware of how oddly she had phrased her question. Naruto, already consumed by shame, felt himself sinking even further when the girl asked him that question. I'm so stupid was the only thought in his mind at that moment. If only he had greeted her like a normal person, he wouldn't have to endure all of this. I can still correct my mistake. He blinked, suddenly realizing that all he had to do was apologize to her. You're blanking. Whatever Sarah was about to say vanished from her mouth when Naruto interrupted her. I'm sorry for staring at you like that before. I didn't mean to do it. His apology, though very sincere, only served to further confuse the girl. What are you saying? She blinked at him. When were you staring at me? I don't understand. She was genuinely confused and the boy's random statements were not helping her at all. Naruto's mind came to a screeching halt as he realized that he had only made the situation worse. She didn't even notice me staring at her. Fantastic Naruto, you truly are a master of social interactions. Before he could indulge in self-depreciation, he knew he had to address the chaos he had just unleashed. Haha, I was joking. He tried the basics he had learned from the students at the school, but cringed immediately when he saw the blank look on her face. Not I was serious. His lips began to tremble a little when the girl remained motionless. Fine. Having had enough of everything, Naruto finally decided to confront it in his way. Listen, while you were explaining yourself, I couldn't help but notice your hair. You were looking so cool with your hair flowing in the wind that I forgot to listen to what you were saying. Naruto gasped for air, managing to spit out everything in a single breath. It was now up to the girl to see how she would react. I see, are you one of those awkward types my father told me once about? It's fine, I sympathize with your situation. Naruto stood speechless, struggling to understand what he had just heard. Impossible, he muttered under his breath, utterly confused. How could there be someone even more awkward than himself and Kyoko in this world? It was unimaginable, yet the girl standing before him had shattered his belief. Sarah, who was noticing the change in the boy's demeanor, began to shake a little. What are you talking about? She asked him, fully aware that she wouldn't be able to keep up this brave facade for much longer. PFFT, haha. Her fear became a reality when the boy began to laugh like a maniac. Did he realize that I was faking confidence? She hoped not, otherwise, that would mean that she would appear weak in front of a child too. She wouldn't be able to handle that. You're not any better. You're as awkward as me, hahaha. Naruto's words elicited a mysterious reaction from Sarah. What do you mean, like you? Her gaze was now fixed on the boy. I mean you are just like me. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No. Yes. Sarah accepted her defeat. There was no point in arguing with someone as stubborn as the boy in front of her. What if I'm awkward? Is it a problem? Her words, though spoken with bravery, still escaped in a hushed tone, like a faint breeze. Nope. Why would that be a bad thing? But you were laughing at me for being weak a while ago. Naruto paused and blinked at the girl. Huh? His voice and the expression on his face failed to conceal his confusion. Weak? When did I call you weak? He asked her, intrigued by how she reached that conclusion without any valid basis. Why, you said I am awkward. And that means you are weak. Sarah nodded eagerly. Yes, she whispered, lowering her gaze as the boy approached her. How? She paused for a moment to see if he was still coming toward her. He is, she thought, and then her feet started to walk in the opposite direction. Boy, don't run away and answer my question. Little feet stopped their stride as Sarah raised her head and looked into his eyes, a hint of vulnerability shining within her own. Because my father says that only weak people lack the courage to confront others, and that makes them awkward. She could still remember every word that man had said to her. They were the sole reason for her timid personality after all. Wow, that means I'm weak too, Naruto muttered softly as a small smile crept onto his lips. Or maybe, just maybe, your father isn't that intelligent. His words were followed by a surprised gasp from the girl. What? He looked at her in confusion. I'm serious. The way you have just described your father, he sounds like a clown to me. Sarah was at a loss for words as no one in her life had called her father a clown. They couldn't even if they wanted to because he is very powerful. It was his power that kept everyone around him in control. So what? He can't be more powerful than my mom. Hell, I'm sure he is weaker than me. Sarah let out a genuine chuckle, something she hadn't done in ages. If there was any doubt in her mind before, it was now completely dissolved. This boy was absolutely clueless about her father. He is Lucifer. She did not wish to shock or scare him with the new information. All she wanted was to see how he would handle that newfound news. Say what? Sarah was about to repeat her words, but quickly recognized the recklessness of disclosing such sensitive information. Her family was not well regarded in the post-Civil War underworld, and by revealing her lineage to a being from that realm, she was only drawing unwelcome attention to herself. And nothing. She squeaked and sighed in relief when the boy looked away from her. Naruto mumbled while stroking his chin thoughtfully. Then why is he more powerful than you? If he is a devil, then eventually you will surpass him. It's just a matter of time. It wasn't easy, Sarah wanted to tell him that, but she couldn't bring herself to. No. He will always be more powerful than me because he can do things that I can't. Naruto was quick to respond. Like what? He has all the traits of a devil while I don't have any of them. Now that really made Naruto laugh. Haha, what? Are you serious? What kind of argument is that? Huh? Naruto compassed himself and gazed at the girl before letting out a sigh. You don't need to possess those traits to be strong, you know. he assured her, continuing, "You can be super strong without relying on any of those pointless devilish qualities." Sarah was stunned. How? She felt as if her entire world were crumbling before her very eyes. Until now, she had been living in a reality that told her she had to embrace her true devilish nature in order to become powerful. But now this boy, this strange boy, appeared out of nowhere and was trying to change her whole reality. "By being yourself. Take me as an example. I'm half devil and half human, but I'm still more powerful than most of the devils. You know why?" "Why?" Because Naruto paused, trying to recall the words of wisdom his mother used to comfort him when he felt lonely and weak after being rejected by other devil kids. "Because? I don't know. I'm just cool, I guess." Sarah's eyes twitched in agitation, but before she could say anything, Naruto interrupted her by saying something incredible, something that she had never thought she would hear about herself from someone else's mouth. "Just like you. You look cool too, you know." Her beautiful white face was doused in the color of red. What are you saying?" she murmured, still finding it hard to believe that he had just said that. "The truth. You do look cool though, even more than me." Taking a pause, he continued. "You know what? You're just like that wife of Lucifer, and I'm sure one day, you will become as powerful as her too." I. Beep. Their strange conversation came to a halt when Naruto's watch suddenly began to ring. Oh, was it really over already? Naruto sighed in defeat as he checked his watch and realized that their school lunch break had come to an end. "I didn't even get to practice, and now I have to go back to that boring class." Sarah anxiously bit her lower lip as she realized that she had wasted a stranger's time for nothing. It was because of her that he hadn't been able to accomplish what he came here to do. "I'm sorry," she immediately said, burdened by her own actions. "Huh? It's because of me that you didn't get to practice." Naruto would have chuckled and made a witty remark, but held it back when he saw flickers of Kyoko in her personality. "It's fine. You don't have to apologize for anything." He placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled gently when she didn't flinch back this time. "Also, I like talking to you, so don't feel bad. Hell, I want to talk more, but time is over." "Really?" He nodded his head and did something that his mother always does to him whenever he is sad. He ruffled her hair and patted her head twice. "Yes." His whisper elicited a strange reaction from her, but he paid no attention as he was busy planning his next words. "Also, don't worry about these devil traits and all. I'm sure you will become strong without them on your own." "On your own?" "Yes." While Naruto only said those words to motivate the girl, he didn't know he had just introduced Sarah to one of those countless traits of a devil. Obsession. Sarah's eyes sparkled with amusement as they gazed into the deep limitless pools of Naruto's eyes. "Who are you?" Flashback end. When Naruto first learned about the concept of luck, he used to dismiss it as nothing more than a foolish belief. However, as he matured, he came to realize that it held far more credibility than he had initially thought. It was not a phony concept after all. How could he say that? If it were merely a fictitious concept, Naruto wouldn't have ended up with the wonderful family he has now. If history was to be believed, he was merely an orphan whom his mother found lying in the bushes of a garden in the city. If luck hadn't been on his side that day, he could have been discovered by someone who was not as competent as his mother. Perhaps he might have been left on his own, or worse, he might not have been found at all. The mere fact that Naruto was discovered by none other than his beautiful mother, Layla, was sufficient to make him believe, to some degree, in the notion of luck. Some extent. And it seemed that Lady Luck was aware of his skepticism as well. So, in order to transform him into a true believer, she made the decision to once again alter his life and introduce him to his best friend, Kyoko, a girl for whom he would be willing to do anything. Although the situation in which they met was quite sensitive, he still considered himself very fortunate to have met her before anyone else could harm her. If he wasn't sure before then, after meeting Kyoko, he was sure now. Lady Luck existed, and not only did she exist, but she also wanted him to worship her. Unfortunately for her, Naruto was not the type to worship a cosmic concept or being just because they were nice to him. No, he was not that type of person. If she wanted him to worship her, she needed to do something truly extraordinary, something that would instantly make him succumb to her charm. Newsflash, she did just that. Lady Luck finally managed to turn him into a believer. "Can you repeat that, Mom?" Naruto whispered, still not believing he heard her right. Find Kyoko and Naruto meets Sarah. From now on, she is going to live with us until her uncle returns from his business trip. A huge smile blossomed on Naruto's face. Life is good. Or so he thought, completely unaware of the hungry eyes that were analyzing every part of his body with precise intensity. Kyoko knew making friends was hard. Hell, it was undoubtedly one of the most challenging tasks imaginable for an introvert, and unfortunately, she happened to be the only one in her small family. It was because of this that she had a very dull and lonely childhood, as she had never tried to befriend anyone. She found it impossible to do so and convinced herself that she was fine the way she was and didn't need any friends. It worked too. For years, her strategy worked well as she lived her monotonous life without anyone by her side. But after meeting new people and seeing how they acted with each other, she couldn't help but want a friend of her own. For the first time in her life, she wanted to make true friends, and that she did, the only drawback being that those friends were not her friends to be exact. They were predators and she was their victim. Sad life, Kyoko whispered, remembering her past life with a scowl on her face. After seeing the outcome of her initial efforts to make friends, Kyoko made the decision to revert to her original plan of solitude. She didn't need friends. She was fine without them. At least, that's what she used to think. Everything changed when she met Naruto. He transformed everything and brought excitement and joy into her life. Even now, I still struggle to make friends. A hint of embarrassment began to overrun her face, causing it to lose a bit of its glow. During her long stay with Naruto and Layla, Kyoko learned a multitude of things. Whether it was drawing or cooking, the family of two never missed an opportunity to pamper her and provide her with valuable skills. However, they overlooked one crucial aspect. They forgot to teach me how to initiate a conversation with a stranger. Her lips formed an adorable pout as her eyes wandered over to the other side of the dining table where Naruto and Layla were sitting, engaged in conversation with a newly added member of her family. Seeing both of them trying their best to start a conversation with Sarah made her feel utterly useless, like a worthless failure. Seriously, she needed to find a way to join the conversation, otherwise, the new girl would end up receiving all the attention from her small, lovely family. Speaking of them, Kyoko shifted her gaze slightly to catch sight of the new girl's face and instantly furrowed her brows upon seeing the fixed expression. It was unexpected, brimming with affection and lust, with the latter overpowering all else. Why does she have that look on her face? The poor girl couldn't help but ask herself. Fortunately, her question was answered instantly when she followed Sarah's gaze. Her hungry and love-filled eyes were looking at none other than Naruto. Kyoko's senses went on alert as soon as she realized the gravity of the situation. She wants Naruto. Her heart sank a little as she whispered those words in her mind. Whether new or not, the girl sitting with her family was breathtaking in every way. Kyoko was aware that if she desired, that girl could effortlessly snatch Naruto from her grasp. Knew she wouldn't let that happen. There was no way she was going to let Naruto be snatched away by a new girl. He is mine and mine alone. Her train of thought stopped abruptly. Okay, Auntie too. He is ours and ours only. The determined look on her face doubled as she finally stood up from her chair, ready to confront the girl who was attempting to entice Naruto with her charms. Excuse me. Ooh. The first thing Sarah noticed as soon as she entered the house was how cozy and beautiful it was. Decorated with plants and rocks on the outside, the interior of the house was just as stunning and tranquil. If she were to describe it, she would say it was one of those houses she had only read about in fairy tale books during her childhood. I always wanted to live in a house like this. While the elegance and serenity were the major factors that made the house amazing for Sarah, the fact that the people who invited her to live with them lived here made the house even more extraordinary for her. Unlike her previous houses, whether it be the one her father owned or the one where Azazel lived, this house exuded a positive energy that resonated deep within her. It comforted her heart, if that was even possible. So how was your trip, dear? Her beautiful hazel eyes turned towards the direction of the voice, and a hint of surprise flickered in her gaze when she recognized the lady who had just asked about her trip. She hesitated, her mind struggling to conjure a coherent response to that particular question, especially with Naruto's presence beside her. Was it uncomfortable? The warmth and affection in Layla's voice took Sarah by surprise. She was unaccustomed to being treated kindly by people. Apart from her mother, no one had shown her such affection, not even her caretakers, colleagues, or Naruto. So, to suddenly experience it was quite unexpected for her, and she was unprepared for it. It was fine, Miss Layla. She paused, mentally applauding herself for remembering the lady's name just at the right moment. It would have been an embarrassing sight if she hadn't. Layla cooed, finding the whole ordeal amusing and cute. Azazel was right. She is so cute. Her heart leaped with joy again when the girl lowered her head to hide her face. Incidents like this were the reason she accepted Azazel's offer. As soon as he shared the girl's story and showed Layla a picture of her, she immediately knew that she had made the correct decision in welcoming the girl into their home. Otherwise, there was no reason for her to talk to that man, let alone accept his ludicrous suggestion. Anyway, your name is Sarah, right? Naruto's question changed the atmosphere of the room in an instant. Sarah, trying her best to conceal her face from the lady, turned her attention to the boy. Yes, she replied, her voice carrying a hint of hurt and confusion in response to the question. Did he not recognize me? A dreadful thought started to take root in her mind, but before it could grow into something significant, Sarah immediately extinguished it. There was simply no possibility of Naruto forgetting about her. He said I'm very cool. As far as Sarah knew, people rarely forgot about someone who looked cool to them. It was human nature to be attracted to cool and good-looking individuals. Naruto mused, his gaze hovering over the girl's figure as if he was attempting to recall a distant memory. I think I have seen you somewhere before. He whispered, his conviction unwavering. Her eyes, her lips, and her face were all too familiar, making Naruto sure that he had crossed paths with her before. Of course you have, Naruto. I am your eternal rival. Sarah answered defiantly in her mind. Yes, you have, Naruto. We met in that clearing years ago when you came there to train. Realizing it was best to be transparent with him, she decided to guide him to that particular memory of them. Ah. A faint smile flickered across Sarah's lips, but upon closer inspection, one could see a hint of lingering sadness beneath it. It was a bittersweet feeling to realize that Naruto needed to be reminded of her identity. The situation was both pleasant and sad. It made her realize that Naruto was naive when it came to things like that, and it also suggested that he probably forgot about her shortly after their first meeting. Yes, however, she chose not to argue with him about it. For her, being near him was all that mattered. Wait, if you're the girl from that clearing, then that means you're a dev. Naruto hesitated, clenching his teeth to prevent himself from uttering something he shouldn't in the presence of Kyoko. You're just like me, he improvised, oblivious to the impact his words had on Sarah. Like you? Red drenched Sarah's face once more. Yes, you can say that. Her lips formed a small smile as she whispered, her eyes struggling to stay fixed on his face. They darted back and forth, hiding the shimmering happiness within them. Ah well then I'm glad you came here to live with us, Sarah. Sarah's heart fluttered as Naruto's lively face and bright smile sparked a warm feeling within her, and soon the girl was looking down at the ground again. Layla, who was observing everything from the sidelines, couldn't help but notice Sarah's attitude and mannerisms when she was talking to Naruto. Cool and calm as the girl might try to appear on the outside, Layla could see the cracks in her demeanor. She is embarrassed. Her lips curved upwards as the realization finally dawned on her. She is just like Kyoko. While it was just a simple observation from Layla, the female Phenex didn't know how true her statement was. Speaking of Kyoko, she turned a little to look at the girl and couldn't help but chuckle at her cute expression. My she is jealous. A wicked grin spread across her lips as she observed how fiercely Kyoko was glaring at Sarah. Should I have a little fun? She contemplated it for a moment but ultimately decided against it because Sarah had just joined them. It would be incredibly impolite for her to attempt joking with the girl on her very first day here. Excuse me? But that didn't stop Kyoko from doing so. Faster than one could notice, Layla snapped her head to the side when she heard Kyoko's voice. Oh my, she's going to do something cute today, Layla thought, a smile playing on her lips as she eagerly waited for the drama to unfold. Huh? It was Naruto who reacted first to Kyoko's intervention. What is your name? Kyoko asked, her enthusiasm quickly fading when Naruto responded with a blank face. What? I completely forgot to ask for her name, Naruto. She tried to explain herself, but the boy continued to stare at her impassively. Sarah. Kyoko breathed a sigh of relief when Sarah promptly answered her question before Naruto could embarrass her any further with his intense stare. I see, she whispered, her feet strolling towards the girl at a rhythmic pace. Nice to meet you, Sarah-san. As soon as she reached close to her, the first thing Kyoko did was place a chair between Sarah and Naruto's chairs. If she wants to flirt so badly, then she can do it with me instead. For her, Naruto was someone she couldn't share with anyone except her aunt. Therefore, Kyoko had no problem with being a little bit mean today. Nice to meet you too. Kyoko blinked when Sarah trailed off abruptly, but soon realized it had more to do with her losing her train of thought than anything else. Wait, I forgot to mention my name, she gasped as tints of red shaded her cheeks. My name is Kyoko Phenex. She immediately introduced herself, making sure to emphasize the Phenex part to hint at her connection to Naruto and her aunt. I see. Nice to meet you, Kyoko-san. Kyoko smirked at Sarah, reveling in the satisfaction of asserting her dominance over a girl she had only just met moments ago. It was a huge win for her according to her mind. I never knew Naruto had such a cute sister, and just like that Sarah spoiled Kyoko's dance of victory in a matter of a few seconds. Huh? It was Sarah's turn to smirk. I never knew Naruto had such a cute sister, she said with a vicious grin as she watched Kyoko squirm in her seat. You really thought I didn't know anything about you, Kyoko? Fool. I know everything about you and your family. Every word Sarah spoke in her mind was true. She knew almost everything about Naruto's family. He had saved her, so it was only natural for her to learn everything about him in order to understand him better. The fact that this information would also help her in their fated battle was an added bonus. I'm not his sister. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Really? She asked and looked at Naruto for further explanation. She's correct, Naruto quickly clarified. Kyoko isn't my biological sister. We adopted her after I learned about her situation. He realized that he had made an unnecessary comment as both Layla and Kyoko facepalmed at his words. Their situation. The whole room went silent as soon as Sarah uttered those words. Uo. Near prison. Freedom. It was one of those things that one doesn't appreciate while they have it and only recognizes its worth when they lose it or are forced to give it away. Shiro was no exception to that. Throughout his entire life, he had taken freedom for granted, only coming to realize its crucial importance for survival when it was stripped away from him. What he used to think was useless to be held in high regard soon became one of the most necessary commodities he wanted to have in his life. He wanted to be free again, just like how he used to be in the past. In the past, he was an uninhibited individual, someone who could do anything and escape the consequences due to his wealth. Money. It was the thing that ruined him, or as he says, made him what he was in the past. A monster. A small smile flickered on his dry lips as the rays of freedom finally reached his eyes. I missed this so much. His eyes dilated with happiness as he realized that he was finally free. I am out of that hell now. His heart couldn't help but beat erratically as the sensation he was feeling at that moment was incredible. It was a surreal experience and he wanted to savor every moment of it. This air, these trees, and this city, I missed them so much. There had been very few moments in his life when he had been as happy as he was at the moment. Today was different, very different from all the days he had lived in the past. Finally, he was free from the place he called hell. Hell. Hate flickered in his eyes as he recalled the reason he had to endure the most crucial period of his life in that hell. During the time when he could have been building a family with a stunning woman, he was forced to live his life like a beggar. It was anything but fun and full of pleasure. All because of that girl. A familiar face began to take shape before his eyes. It was the face he had grown to loathe the most during his time behind bars. Kyoko, Shiro whispered, his voice filled with a mix of scorn and anger, you made my life a living hell. If it hadn't been for her, he could have been leading a perfectly normal life, just like everyone else. But no, that girl had to come along and destroy everything. Everything. She took everything away from him. His friends, his family, and most importantly, his perfect life. Prior to meeting her, his life was amazing and lavish, filled with everything one could desire. Money, sex, entertainment, you name it, and Shiro had it. With his friends, he was living a life that resembled a fairy tale. However, everything changed when he met her, or more precisely, 2 years after meeting her. At first everything was fine. Their relationship was progressing exactly how Shiro had planned it to progress. There was friendship, fun, and most importantly pleasure. The sole reason he became friends with her was because of that one thing. He was going through the peak of his teenage phase at that time, and his hormones were all over the place. He wanted pleasure, regardless of the methods used, and in his relentless pursuit of it, he set upon a course that society, particularly the underprivileged sector, did not approve of. He became what people call a predator, but, if he had to be honest, Shiro didn't care what people thought of him. For him, as long as he was getting his fill full of pleasure, he was fine. Good or bad didn't matter to him. He had money, and money erased the boundaries between the concepts of good and evil. As long as he had money, he felt invincible, and this sense of being unstoppable fostered a feeling of arrogance. He believed he was entitled to nothing but the very best that the world had to offer. Whether it's the most luxurious car, the most expensive food, or the freshest skincare, he felt entitled to them all. He wanted nothing but to savor things that others couldn't, and that led him to scour for younger girls. From what he understood, the younger the girl, the more desirable she seemed to those who had an unfathomable amount of power within their grasp. For him, the younger girls were not only pure but also easy to tame. They were naive and easy to manipulate. So even if he did something out of the limits to them, there was no chance that he was going to face any consequences for it. She was no different from any of them. Kyoko was just like every other girl he had ravaged before. Lonely, sad, and vulnerable. She was the perfect target, and Shiro was not the type to let a girl like her slip through his fingers. He wanted her badly. She was beautiful and young, everything that his heart desired. Her smooth skin and innocent face only added more to her value. It was so easy to fool her. It took him only a week to deceive her. Her longing for a friend led her to him, and he was more than willing to fill that role. He initially pretended to be her friend, promising to always support her whenever she needed him. However, once he realized that he had complete control over her, he swiftly moved on to the next stage of his scheme. I introduced her to my friends. Once Shiro did that, he realized that there was no turning back for Kyoko anymore. Every opportunity she once had to escape had vanished completely. Now, all she could do was descend further into the deep abyss of desire and mistreatment that he had specifically created for her. For a whole year, he abused her to his liking, and the girl had no option but to endure everything. It began with small deliberate touches to her sensitive areas, and before the unfortunate girl realized what was happening, Shiro was already indulging in every inch of her body with his friends. From her small, soft hands to her slender feet and even her still growing assets, Shiro left no part of her body untouched. In his eyes, she was entirely his to savor, and he never missed an opportunity to do so. She was beautiful. Shiro's lips curved upwards into a cruel smile as he remembered the struggles that Kyoko used to put against him. They were amusing, to say the least, but unfortunately for her, they had no power to push him away. If anything, her struggles only made him punish her even more. Why? Because the cries she used to let out after that used to fill his heart with pride. They were the source of his arrogance, a constant reminder of the authority he held over someone else's life. That fact alone was enough to make him climax sometimes. But then everything changed all of a sudden. The smile disappeared from his face as memories of the past began to fill up his mind again. Shiro didn't know what went wrong or what changed that day, but after that day, Kyoko changed forever. She found something that he had never thought she would find in her life ever again. Courage. She found courage, something that she needed very much to stand against him. At first, Shiro couldn't believe what was happening. Kyoko, a girl who didn't even understand the difference between sex and teasing, was standing against him of all people. She was defying his orders, was calling him names, and most importantly was telling him to go away. It was the worst day of his life. He couldn't understand what was happening and why it was happening. Wasn't Kyoko supposed to be his little toy for her entire life, just like every other girl he had abused before her? Did she forget the extent of his power? Whatever the reason may have been, it left Shiro utterly astounded. It marked the first occasion in his existence where someone, particularly a girl, dared to challenge him. And the fact that the said girl was none other than his Kyoko only turned the situation even crazier. Fortunately, all of his questions were answered in the following days when he spotted that boy walking out of the school with Kyoko. He changed her. He took my Kyoko away from me. It was due to the boy and his intelligent, hot mother that he ended up in prison. Driven by money and its power, Shiro completely overlooked the fact that there were people with more wealth than him in his world. Unfortunately, that boy and his mother were one of those people. They had power that even he couldn't dream of having. That lady managed to defeat his father in the battle of money, and that led to his downfall. But now that I'm back, I'll take my revenge. His hands twitched with excitement, ready to feel the touch of Kyoko's skin again. I'm sure her skin will be as smooth as it used to be in the past. The cruel smile returned to his face, this time even more fierce than before. Sadly, she wouldn't be pure anymore. The smile faltered a little as the thought of someone else stealing her virginity plagued his mind for a second. I had been waiting to take it from her on her 12th birthday, he grumbled, undoubtedly disappointed with how things had turned out. Shiro was supposed to be her first in everything, but sadly fate took that chance away from him and gave it to that boy. I'll kill him in front of her. His body trembled with excitement at the mere thought of killing that boy. But before killing him, I'll rape that. Closing his eyes, he let the darkness overwhelm his vision as he took a deep breath to savor the newfound freedom and the pleasure that was awaiting him in the future. Ooh. Sarah knew she had touched on a sensitive topic when the entire room fell silent right after she finished asking her question. What do I do now? She didn't know how to handle such a situation as she had never been in one before. Still, she decided to relieve the tension by being considerate of their privacy. If you don't want to share it with me then it's fine. She looked at them again and breathed a sigh of relief when she saw their smiles return. I'm sorry Sarah. It was Naruto who spoke first. But Kyoko's past is a topic that none of us want to discuss in front of others. His gaze softened as he glanced at Kyoko's face, which was marked by sadness and shame, something that he hated to see there. I see, Sarah whispered, looking at Kyoko with confusion and curiosity. The girl had secrets that she didn't know. Interesting, that was all she could think at that moment. If that's the case, then I won't inquire about her past ever again. She was lying. There was no way she would not dive deep into her past after witnessing the reactions of her new family. If there was something that was hurting the girl and her family, then she was going to find out what it was and would destroy it. Oh, you are so sweet and well-mannered Sarah. The atmosphere in the room lightened up immediately as soon as Layla decided to join the conversation again. Your uncle was right, you will be a perfect addition to our little family, she said as her soft hands traveled to Sarah's face, cupping her red cheeks within them. Welcome to our family Sarah. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as the weight of Layla's words finally fell upon her shoulders. Although they might seem short and insignificant to others, for her, they were the most precious thing at that moment. Is this how it feels to be loved and welcomed by someone? She found herself asking, uncertain of what she should feel or do at that moment. Throughout her life, her mother had been the only one to express love for her. Apart from her, there had never been anyone who greeted her with such warmth like her new family just had. Layla. Sarah gazed at the woman and found herself unable to resist a smile when she saw nothing but warmth and sincerity in her expression. It was extraordinary. Thank you. Oh, you don't have to thank. Ha. Everyone in the room was startled when Naruto, out of nowhere, began to gasp heavily and clutch his chest. Naruto. Layla reacted quickly and positioned herself beside him, with Kyoko and Sarah soon following her lead. What happened, dear? She asked, her voice filled with concern and fear as she saw beads of sweat rolling down his face. Naruto, gasping for air, regained his composure and rose from his chair. It's nothing, he weakly whispered, intensifying the tension in the room for the other three individuals. You're drenched in sweat, Naruto. Kyoko placed her hand on his forehead and began to wipe away the excessive sweat. Something is definitely wrong, she whispered, her eyes never leaving her friend's face for a moment. In response, Naruto did something that heightened everyone's concern. Rather than answering the question, he freed himself from their grip and dashed towards the entrance of the house. Naruto. The boy didn't look back, and before the girls realized it, he was already outside the house. Uo. An unknown location. Darkness. Shiro knew it very well. It was a state of pure madness where nothing was visible to the naked eye, only the mind could see and function within it. The decision you made in that state depended on the type of person you were. Some individuals never surrendered to it, constantly seeking an escape, while people like him embraced the comfort and solace it offered. It was in the darkness that he revealed his true self, especially to those girls who ventured away from the safety of light and foolishly followed him to the darkest corners of their lives. In a way, darkness was his only loyal companion. It stood by him when he embarked on his journey for pleasure and remained with him even within the tormenting silence of that wretched prison. Unlike other people in his life, darkness never abandoned him. However, that did not mean Shiro did not give anything in return to darkness. He gave it what he knew it desired most. Shiro gave darkness things to conceal from the prying eyes of people. It was a fair trade in his opinion, one that for sure would have solidified their friendship for eternity. But he was unaware of just how wrong he was. Who is there? Shiro's heart was beating erratically, this time with fear instead of excitement. Hello. His lips that were sporting a cruel smile for most of the day were now parched dry, begging to get a taste of a liquid, no matter what it was. Shiro. Shiro gasped, his face instantly overcome with fear and dread. Who? He stammered, mustering up the courage to ask the individual for their identity. How does it feel? Yet another wave of fear washed over Shiro's trembling body. Feel what? He questioned, straining to catch even a fleeting glimpse of his tormentor. Unfortunately, the suffocating darkness that surrounded him was obstructing his efforts. It was so thick that not a single thing was visible to him in his desperate attempts. To be abducted and rendered useless like this? Shiro's face contorted in response to that comment. The tone that the unknown man was using was far from ordinary. It was brimming with anger and hatred, something Shiro had immediately picked up on when he was abducted by him outside the prison. See, I'm going to ask you one more time, who are you and what do you want? Hoping for a different outcome, he whispered, wishing for the man to answer his question this time. Naruto. It was at that moment that Shiro caught sight of them. Gleaming menacingly in the shadows, two crimson spheres of fury and bitterness were staring at him with an intense glare. They were both terrifying and enchanting, captivating his attention in an instant. And Naruto. Shiro was very familiar with that name. No matter how hard he tried, he could never forget it. It was permanently engraved in his mind. The end. Thanks for watching, also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.